Mayor Martini. Council members Ratty. Lawson.
Here.
Smith.
Here.
Kerrigan.
Here.
Schmidt.
Here.
City Attorney Eiding. Here. And City Manager Carey.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay, if you'd all stand for the invocation speaker, we have Brent Roloffs, Church of Latter-day Saints. I hope. Is he here? Okay, seeing that he's not here, instead of the prayer, let's just do a moment of silence for all those people that gave their lives for our country and those that are in harm's way right now. Thank you. Thank you. If you'd all remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. Chief Farr, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Chief. Okay, next I have comments from the public. Anyone who want to speak under comments from the public? I have no speaking cards. Okay, next is the approval of the agenda, and I would like whoever makes the motion to approve it to move 6.1, the fire chief appointment, up to just before we do announcements and presentations, because we've got a lot of people here that are waiting for this. I don't want you to have to stick around for a long time. So, any moves or anything, Mr. Schmidt?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to approve the agenda as outlined with items 6.1 to 3.1.
Mr. Smith?
Second.
Moved by Councilman Schmidt, seconded by Councilman Smith to approve the agenda as amended. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Passes unanimously. 3.1, consideration and possible approval of minutes of the concurrent meeting of June 10th, 2013, and the regular Sparks City Council meeting of July 22nd, 2013. Any additions or corrections? Mr. Lawson?
So moved.
Do you have a second? Mr. Schmidt?
Second.
Moved by Councilman Lawson, seconded by Councilman Schmidt to approve the minutes of the concurrent meeting of June 10th and the meeting of July 22nd for the City Council. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Passes unanimously. Okay, let's go to 6.1, consideration and possible approval to appoint a new fire chief for City of Sparks and consideration and possible approval of the applicable employment contract. Mr. Carey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, and the assembled public. We did complete a recruitment process for the fire chief's position. I first wanted to take this opportunity to thank Mr. Andy Flock for his fine service as our fire chief. He has been a great fire chief, following in a line of wonderful chiefs that have served the City of Sparks. So. And Mr. Mayor, we have entered into an agreement and a contract today for you to consider the appointment of Thomas R. Garrison. Tom is a City of Sparks firefighter through and through. He came through all positions in the department, rising to the Administrative Division Chief position. He was successfully in his interview, and I place before you his name and contract for your approval at this time.
Questions? No questions. Looking for a motion. Mr. Smith.
I move to confirm the appointment of Thomas R. Garrison to the position of Fire Chief and approval of the employment agreement as recommended by the City Manager and outlined by staff.
Mr. Schmidt.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Smith, seconded by Councilman Schmidt to approve Mr. Garrison. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Passed unanimously. Congratulations, Tom. Before we do the oath, I'd like to introduce the other fire chiefs that are here. We have Chief Bill Farr. Chief Don Young. Chief Ron Irwin. Chief Tom Kluhl. And of course, Chief Andy Flock. Okay, please raise your right hand. Repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Thomas Garrison,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support,
that I will support,
protect, and defend the Constitution
protect, and defend the Constitution
and government of the United States
and government of the United States
and the Constitution and government of the state of Nevada
and the Constitution and government of the state of Nevada
against all enemies,
against all enemies,
whether domestic or foreign,
whether domestic or foreign,
and that I will bear true faith,
and I will bear true faith,
allegiance, and loyalty to the same,
allegiance, and loyalty to the same,
any ordinance, resolution,
any ordinance, resolution,
or law of any state notwithstanding,
or any law of any state notwithstanding,
pursuant to Section 1.110
pursuant to Section 1.110
of the City of Sparks Charter,
of the City of Sparks Charter,
I swear and affirm
I swear and affirm
that I am not under any direct
that I am not under any direct
or indirect obligation to vote for,
or indirect obligation to vote for,
appoint, or elect any person to any office.
appoint, or elect any person to office.
Lost my place. Position or employment in the city government,
Position or employment in the city government,
and that I will well and faithfully perform
and I will well and faithfully perform
all the duties of the office of fire chief
all the duties of the office of fire chief
for the city of Sparks,
for the city of Sparks,
county of Washoe,
county of Washoe,
state of Nevada,
state of Nevada,
on which I am about to enter.
on which I am about to enter.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Just wanted to let everybody know that my wife and I just celebrated our 35th wedding anniversary last week.
Thanks, Tom. Go ahead, say a few words.
Looks like this is on. Mayor, City Council, City Manager. For the record, Tom Garrison, your new Sparks Fire Chief. First off, I'd like to thank everybody that came to support me today. My family, first and second row, my friends, my fire department family, brothers and sisters from the fire department family, and many of the ex-fire chiefs that I've worked for. Their support means more to me than words can describe. And I'm deeply touched by all their support and their recommendations for me to move forward with this position. I've written a speech, but I really don't feel that it's something I want to read for this occasion. So with your permission, I'd just like to speak from the heart.
Absolutely.
Who would have ever thought this ending 26 years ago? I was a pretty nervous, inexperienced, young firefighter. I didn't really know what this firefighting thing was and didn't know if I had the right stuff to make it. I would have never thought this ending for me. I put year after year in. I had many successes. I fought some big fire, took risks, saw a lot of terrible tragedy for people who were devastated by fire and EMS calls. And I became a brother to all the firefighters and in the Sparks Fire Department. Over the years, I worked for 5 different fire chiefs. Fire Chief Don Young, who hired me, Fire Chief Ron Irwin, Fire Chief Fire Chief Lee Layton, Fire Chief Tom Kluel, and the last fire chief was Fire Chief Andy Flock. Each one of these men, they led with vision, integrity, professionalism, and throughout my career, I borrowed something from each and every one of them, especially my primary mentor, Andy Flock. Each of these men started as firefighters, worked their way through the organization to the top, and I'm proud to continue with that tradition of hiring from within. What a great city we live in, right? And what a strong city government that leads it. Each and every department run to perfection by strong leaders. You've got Steve Driscoll in Management Services, Neil Kreutz, Community Services, Brian Allen in PD, Tracy Dominguez, Parks and Rec, Jeff Cronk, Finance, Chet Adams in Legal, just to name a few, and all of them led by a really strong leader, our city manager, Sean Carey. I'm proud to be even included in that group of people. And not to sound condescending to you, I'm proud of this city council. You lead with, sound decision making, you lead with stewardship, and none of you ever flinch when a tough decision needs to be made. And just as, I'm proud of this city council, I think each and every one of you should be proud of your fire department, 90 men and women, thoroughly trained, highly skilled, and each and every one of them dedicated to serving this community. I'm honored and actually very humbled to be leading such a group of exceptional people. So what are you going to get from me? What's this vote going to get you today, other than a guy that can't put away a microphone when he's got a free microphone? You're going to get a person who's lived it. I know the department, I know the culture, I know the community. You're going to get a person who's not afraid to make tough decisions. You're going to get a person who sees the positive rather than the negative side of things. You're going to get a person who knows what right looks like. And finally, you're going to get a person who doesn't need a pat on the back, one that doesn't need the spotlight. I understand tradition. I understand, this ceremony. But from this day forth, when people talk about the Sparks Fire Department, I hope they say,
Turn off your radio.
I hope they say, man, what a great Sparks Fire Department. Just who is their chief anyway? So now I guess we come to the part of the speech you've all been waiting for, and that's the ending. Mayor Martini, respectfully, I hope you learned your lesson here. Don't ever give Garrison an open mic unless he signs a 3-minute public comment card. But all joking aside, I understand the seriousness of the position I've been given. Both hands are firmly on the wheel. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Chief. I think this is what makes our fire department great. Chiefs come from within, always have. I hope they always will. And I think when you come to work for the Sparks Fire Department, you can spend some time here and you can look forward and you can become a chief, like all of these people that are here today have done. So I'm so pleased that we've got another one from within, and I hope there's somebody training out there for the next 6 or 7 or 15 or 20 years, Tom, that you're going to be here, right? So I appreciate it. Thanks again and congratulations. Okay, now that we got the best part of the meeting done, we'll start with the business, I guess. And I don't know if Tom told you, but you're required to stay here for an hour and a half. I don't know when he invited you if he told you you had to do that. So, but no, if you need to go, please feel free to take off. And thank you all for coming and showing Tom's support. See you, Bill.
That's right.
I know how to clear a room.
That's right.
Okay, let's move on to 4.1. Presentation by President, CEO of the Reno Tahoe Airport Authority, Marilee Mora. Come on up, Marilee, and your group, and Mr. Mayberry. Welcome, Marilee, and congratulations on your recent appointment as
Thank you so
the
much.
head of the Airport Authority. We really appreciate the work you're going to have done and the work you're going to do.
Well, good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, council members. That's a tough act to follow. I'm Adam Mayberry, your Community Relations Manager. I'm also one of your appointments to the Airport Authority Board. Also in the audience is Trustee Bill Eck is with us today as well. To my right is Marilee Mora. Marilee is our new President CEO of the Reno Tahoe Airport Authority. She comes to us from the Oakland International Airport. Prior to that, she was with the Reno Tahoe Airport Authority for about 12 years, and prior to that, she's had multiple airport experience under her belt. So we're really glad to have her here. I'm really honored and pleased to be able to present her to you. She has a short presentation that she'll provide. Thank you for your time.
And good afternoon. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here, Mayor, council members, City Manager Carey, members of the public. I also wanted to acknowledge, besides Trustee Eck, we have one of our former trustees that had been appointed by Sparks, and that's Joe Mayer in the audience. And I do want to acknowledge that, thank you, Mayor Martini, for coming out under the leadership of Adam Mayberry, the chair of the board. We had our first retreat last Friday at Red Hawk, and thank you very much for the warm welcome that you gave to the trustees. And I think it was your good karma. They had a great day, so thank you for kicking that off. And I'm just absolutely delighted to be here. One of the things that I do believe in is strong communication, so I hope to be back here on a frequent basis updating you on the progress of the Reno Tahoe Airport Authority. I want to just kind of update you on some of the things going on at the airport. Obviously, I think you've probably seen the slide. The Airport Authority is financially self-sufficient. We do make 70% of our revenues are generated by non-airline sources, 30% coming from the airlines. It's important for us to make revenue from other than the airlines so that we can keep our rates and charges low and a reasonable level to bring in airline service to the airport. We do contribute $2 billion in annual economic impact, and there are about 2,500 people that are employed at the airport in various capacities. So it is we think of ourselves as an economic engine, but also a job creator for the community. We have 16 destinations that we have nonstop flights to. This map really shows you those areas that we do serve. One of the things that we are working on is air service development, because we have seen in recent years that we've had a downturn in some of the air service at the airport. But the good news is more recently we've seen an uptick. Our passengers have been growing a bit in recent months. And Allegiant Airlines, which in the past only provided charter service to the airport, is now doing scheduled airline service. And back in February, they started service to Las Vegas. In June, they started service to Bellingham, and Oakland International, they're going to start service on August 30th. Southwest Airlines did pull out of that market on June 1st, so we do have Allegiant back in that market. We're hoping that Allegiant Airlines, we hope you all support Allegiant. We hope that they do well at Reno Tahoe International. We'd like to see them create a mini hub of sorts there. So, that's the good news, that they are adding flights, and we hope that they continue to grow. Alaska Airlines is another airline that is expanding at Reno Tahoe, and they did fill the gap when Southwest Airlines pulled out of the San Jose market. Alaska Airlines is serving San Jose, and in November, Alaska is stepping in with new service to Portland, so that's all good news. And I just might mention that also that those Alaska Airlines flights to San Jose, they're great connections to both Mexico and to Hawaii. We do, the good news is that we still do have really good air service for a community of our size, and this slide just really demonstrates, compared to other populations that are similar, we have a lot more air service than similar size areas. So we still feel fortunate, and our goal really is to, keep the airline service that we have at the airport, maintain that air service, but again, grow in new markets. As many of you know, we just completed what we called the Gateway Project, and for many years we had looked at consolidation of the checkpoints, and in March the new checkpoint did open. There was $100 million of improvements in the last 5 years in the airport. We went from a new inline baggage handling system, which we called the ABC project, and then we went into the Gateway Project that was the consolidation of the checkpoints and the creation of the food and beverage and new retail options that are now post-security on the second level. So I think that what we really have created is a sense of place. When you land at Reno Tahoe International Airport, you know that you're in the Reno Sparks area when you land. And we continue to want to, showcase what's great about our community. Under the leadership of Chairman Mayberry, I think one of the things you're going to see this next year is really more visibility for the city of Sparks. We're going to be partnering and meeting with the Heritage Museum of Sparks to have an art display in the airport. And visually and by words, you're going to be seeing more mention of Sparks and everything that we do going forward. One of the things that the board so wisely did for the new CEO is in June, there was a new strategic plan that was adopted by the board, and this was a 6-month process that was led by Adam Mayberry, and I think it's something that the airport needed for a long time. Strategic plan really helps both the staff and the board be more aligned in where we're going in the future, so it is really a great roadmap, and we're going to be talking about that more and more this fall, and there are 5 really important areas that we're going to be focused on. So it's great to have a strategic plan going forward. Staff is working on the implementation of that plan. Again, to talk about, we're looking to engage the community more, and certainly we're looking to engage Sparks more in that conversation about our strategic plan. We're looking to have some community events starting in early October to kind of introduce the strategic plan to the community, and then we're planning to come back to this board, to this city council, and to the community at large on an annual basis and tell everybody how are we doing on that strategic plan. So we really look forward to working with you, working closely with you. Again, we appreciate the leadership of Chairman Mayberry and of Trustee Bill Eck. And with that, I'll answer any questions, but I'm looking forward to, I hope I can get back on your agenda in the future to talk more about the strategic initiatives that we have. So thank you so much for your time, and I'm just absolutely delighted to be back in the area. Having been gone for just under 2 years, I really learned the meaning of that saying, home means Nevada, so it's wonderful to be back here. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Marilee. Questions? Ron Schmidt.
Do the applause. Thank you, Mayor and Council. Marilee, I got the opportunity to go to Marilee's first board meeting and Chairman Mayberry's first chair of the meeting, and I spoke to the board at that time, and I want to just kind of rephrase what I said at that meeting. That I think that the Reno Sparks Tahoe community is absolutely a great place for you, Marilee, and we're delighted to have you as our airport director. I think the board of trustees went through a very thorough process and chose you as our airport director. I think it's phenomenal for our community, and I think most folks know that I use your airport each week, multiple times on some weeks, and it's a great asset to our community, and our community is very, very fortunate to have you here. And I thank you for reaching out to us as a council and as individuals to talk to you about things, and I commend your leadership and Mr. Mayberry there being chosen for the director, and we look forward to work in a great partnership, and thank you very much for your service. We appreciate you being here.
Thank you for your comments.
Anyone else? Okay. Early, thanks.
Thank you for this opportunity.
You bet. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Let's go to 4.2 special recognition to 3 businesses: Belfour Property Restoration, Sims Metal Management, ABC Fire Extinguisher Company, as the title sponsors for the 2013 Sparks Fire Department Project Safe Golf Fundraiser. Mr. King.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Fire Marshal Bob King for record, and I do want to thank you very much for allowing me to come here today to give special recognition for 3 local companies that became our title sponsors for our 4th annual Project Safe Golf Fundraiser this year. Without these type of sponsorships, we wouldn't be as successful as we were. And this year was a banner year. This is our 4th one, and this year we raised over $13,000 for the program. So to date, with all 4 golf tournaments, we're over $38,000, and it's just awesome. But the recognition goes to all the businesses and the sponsors out there that help us get there. And so today, with your permission, I would like to have you, Mr. Mayor, present a plaque to each one of them. I'll bring them up individually in no particular order, and take a picture to give them thanks for their donations.
Okay.
The first one is Belfour Property Restoration. That would be Chris Nelson and Michelle Turner. The next company is ABC Fire and Extinguisher Company. Nick Brown. And then Sims Metal Management, Matt Carroll. That's the end of my presentation.
Thanks, Chief.
That's the end of my
Appreciate it.
questions.
Lots of feel-good stuff today. That's great. Without volunteers and people like that, we just don't make it. So, thank you. Let's move on to 4.3, presentation of a new business, Innovolix, Inc., Larry Martin, President. Welcome, Larry. How are you?
Very good, thank you.
Did I butcher your name pretty bad?
Not my name, but you did. Innovolex is the name of the company.
Innovolex, okay.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and City Council members. Thank you so much for the opportunity to introduce you to Innovolex. My name is Larry Martin. I'm the CEO and Managing Director of Innovolex, and we develop full-color digital display video and audio technologies. Our focuses are listed up on the screen there for you. Do I hit the enter key to move? Oh, the arrow down. Okay, great. So these are some of our products. We do a variety of different products. If you have any, would like any information about any of them, I'm happy to meet with you and talk about them more. But I think today what I'd like to do is focus on one of our digital display products. It's a Vermeer Optimizer. It's a processor scaler. And so recently, the Small Business Administration issued published a report that concluded that the most efficient and effective way to communicate a message is on a digital display. And any business which properly implemented a digital display on its premises would experience between 15 and 150% increase to its bottom line. In another report, the largest planner and user of digital displays in the world concluded that the higher the quality picture, the longer the picture was viewed, and as the view times increased, so did the comprehension of the message. The message could be anything. It could be directions to the airport, or it could be an Amber Alert, or it could be a public information notice, or it could be a product or service advertisement. These three awarenesses have sent display planners and content developers to scurrying off to implement and devise new, more profitable ways to monetize these displays. But the inherent digital display equipment technical inadequacies are magnified by these new strategies. So the three problems that are now arising that never haven't been so noticeable before are low brightness or lousy brightness control, poor picture quality, and low efficiency. You all may have experienced lousy brightness control while you're driving at night down I-80, I-580, just south of I-80, when maybe you're distracted by one of the overly bright displays in that area. It's possible that you may have avoided an accident or even maybe been in one because of the distraction you can attribute to one of those displays. Worldwide, hundreds of municipalities, local jurisdictions are implementing new statutes to control the brightness on these signs. There are over 760 displays that are at risk of being lost because of their inability to meet those new statutes. After brightness, the next biggest complaint viewers of digital displays is the poor graphic content and the poor picture quality. Unfortunately, that's the best that you're going to get with the display systems that are currently in place. Annoyed viewers don't watch very long. Low efficiency is a product of wasted resources, resulting in higher costs, and lost opportunity, resulting in lower profits. There is a solution to these problems, though, and that's our Vermeer optimizer, processor scaler. And what it does is it provides the end user all the tools that are required in order to create the best picture at the lowest cost with the longest view times and the most earnable profits to the bottom line. Our team consists of industry pioneers who are also expert instrument designers and system integrators. Our history starts with LED design and invention in 1968, and since then continues with notable accomplishments directly related to technical excellence, innovation, and implementation of digital display technology. Current digital display market metrics accurately measure its growth at 26 to 27% per year, compounded through the year 2019. Those numbers, though, were compiled prior to these new monetizing strategies that I spoke of earlier. The industry expects that those numbers will increase significantly as the market rolls out. And you can see what some of the market notables have to say about its growth. So all products have competition, and we do too. Our competition are the biggest manufacturers of digital display products in the world. Aside from the rare instance of brightness control feature, what sets us apart from them is we have in our product the six tools that are required in order to make the highest quality picture available when these displays are turned down. Our product is the only processor scaler specifically designed for LED displays, and as such, because of the idiosyncrasies of LED displays, it makes our product probably the best one for digital display as well. Given the prices others charge for their products and the functions they offer, we're the best price-value proposition in the market today. What's important about our timeline is what we have planned for today and beyond. We currently have a product that's fully designed, that's proven. We've been proving it now for since 2007. It's manufactured and ready to go to market. Our next generation product platform is a fully designed and incorporates automated ambient brightness and color controls, which are not available by anybody right now. And it's ready for IP, engineering, manufacturing, and marketing. We're finishing designs on the next following product platform, which will provide additional tools to efficiently display high definition and high quality video. We see another 4 product platforms necessary to meet the increasing demand for tools and technology and video processing power through the year 2020. These are yearly sales penetration projections. If we sell just 1 unit out of 10,000 in the digital display install base, and you can see our projections for revenues in 2018. Innovolux is a new startup. We are incorporated in Nevada. We run our business out of Reno. Our designs come from our offices in Redwood City and San Francisco. Our components are manufactured in China and Korea and Canada, and all of our assembly takes place in Canada. It's our goal to bring all these operations under one roof in northern Nevada. And what we need help with is introductions to casino technical and marketing decision makers, venues of all kinds that use or will be using digital displays, government officials and private industry leaders truly interested in bringing new technology and jobs to northern Nevada. And with that, I'll take any questions that you may have.
Great, thanks, Larry. Any questions for Larry? Innovolux.
Innovolux.
I'm sorry.
You bet. That's all right.
Okay.
Sure.
Larry, thanks
Thank
for
you
coming
so
and
much.
sharing your
Appreciate
products
it.
with us. We appreciate it. Next is 4.4, presentation of sewer storm drain and effluent rate study preliminary results. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. We've got a good feel-good theme going on, so let's continue it by discussing the interesting topic of rates. With me here today, and it's Andy Hummel, Utility Manager. I've got Karen Johnson from FCS Group.
The wet blanket.
Mm-hmm. And then, yeah. And we were going to go through our preliminary results on the rate study that hopefully be bringing forward for consideration.
Do you want me just to take over?
Yeah, if you want to.
Okay. All right.
Give us your
Thank
name for the
you.
record.
Karen Johnson, for the record, FCS Group. So what we have is the preliminary results of the sewer, storm, and effluent utility, looking at the revenue requirement needs for a 5-year study period, looking at different rate strategies for smoothing the rate impacts in, and different alternative rate structures for potential implementation. Looking also at connection charges. The first thing that we wanted to look at is just the changes that we'd be recommending from your current practices on fiscal policies. The two that we're looking for potential revisions to the practices is the use of connection charges and the system reinvestment funding policy. Connection charges are the charges that you get from new growth as they connect to the system. The current practice has been to use the revenue collections from that source to pay for your annual debt service. And as growth has significantly slowed over time, there is a pretty substantial risk to the utility for continuing to rely on that type of a revenue source to pay your obligations for debt service. So the recommendation here is that you use those revenues only to pay for your capital program and to have your rates actually recover your obligations for your annual debt service payments. The other thing that we're looking for an implementation strategy for is system reinvestment funding. That's essentially infrastructure replacement funding, where you are setting aside money annually from your rates to help cash fund your replacement and rehabilitation type of capital projects. Currently, there is not a discrete funding policy for this type of a funding mechanism. Anytime there are operating revenues in excess of the minimum targets, that money has been transferred over to use for this purpose. What we're recommending here is a actual implicit policy where there's a regular annual predictable source of money going into the capital fund to help pay for future infrastructure needs. This is just to highlight kind of what the issue is for the current practice of funding debt service out of your capital connection charges. On the left side of the screen, we're looking at the operating fund, and the current practice is where we have rate revenues, other operating revenues, and operating cash reserves, with that funding used to pay your annual operating and maintenance expenditure, routine capital, and then any transfers to capital. And the capital fund has connection charges, transfers from operating, and whatever existing cash reserves you have in the capital, and that's being used to pay debt service and capital projects, as well as any one-time or periodic grants, reimbursements, or debt proceeds, also to pay for capital projects. So what this shows under the recommendation down at the bottom is that the debt service would be moving from the capital fund into the operating fund area where it would be paid for with rates, and then the system reinvestment funding is paid for, is generated through rates, transferred to the capital fund to be used to pay for the capital projects. The next couple of slides kind of illustrates why this is a important policy consideration for this study period.
We have a question.
Oh, sure.
This is thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for the presentation. I hate to interrupt you, but I just want to make sure that what I'm seeing here is that you're blatantly telling us that we have a practice that doesn't follow our policy for the last 5 years.
No, you have a practice that we're recommending be revised.
But this is not our policy, though. When we did the rate study 5 years ago, when we did a rate study 5 years ago, our policy was that debt service would be paid for by connection fees.
Yes, that was our recommendation in the last study, was that you use rates to pay for debt service then. The decision was to continue using connection charges. So your current policy is to use connection charges to pay for debt service.
So for 5 years, we haven't been in compliance with our policy.
No, you have been doing that. What we're saying, that is your current policy and your current practice. We're recommending that you change that practice
So for
going
5 years,
forward.
we've never paid any debt service out of anything but connection fees?
Correct. And cash balances from future, your annual connection charges plus what you had generated through future years from connection charges.
And then I'm going to request, City Manager, that we get the documentation from Finance that we have not used anything for debt service other than connection fees. That
Okay.
we're in compliance with policy on that, because my understanding is totally different than that. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so that again is the,
Mr. Smith?
oh, sure, sorry.
I'm sorry.
No problem.
Connection fees to pay for debt service for the last 5 years. Well, we all know we haven't had a whole lot of connection fees, but we've been making the payment.
Yes. Next slide would probably demonstrate that. So, yes, you have been making your debt service payments. You've been using connection charges to do
So now
it.
that the connection fees are actually starting to increase a little bit, we're going to move it to another area.
Yeah.
What area is that?
If it would be helpful if we would maybe show the next chart that
Oh, you don't
might
want me jumping
demonstrate
the gun or
that.
anything?
I think it just might help illustrate and answer your question. If there's there's two more slides here that kind of illustrate that issue, and then we can certainly go back and answer any of your questions again on that. So what we're trying to show here is historically, that when there's been substantial growth in the area, your connection charges were significantly higher than they have been in recent years. So we're looking back here from 1999 through about 2007, you can see. So the kind of the blue shaded area, that is your annual debt service amount and how it's increased over time, historically showing up through current, and then what we projected throughout the study period. So the kind of that area graph is your level of annual debt service. What we're showing with kind of the gold bar chart is those have been your historical connection charge revenue. So you can see historically they were more than adequate to pay for your annual debt service charges, plus have extra over to help pay for your capital. Starting around 2006, 2007, the connection charges significantly dropped off due to the slowing of growth in the area. And so this area here, where from 2007 through 2012, where there has been less connection charges than annual debt service, that's been paid for with cash reserves generated from this excess in the early years. So you have fully been in compliance with paying your debt service. It's just the use of it's been with capital reserves from connection charges. What we're showing going...
Another question. Go ahead, Mike.
Sure.
Okay, you answered my first question. So you're saying the excess from the first couple of years has been used for debt service?
Yes.
When does that run out?
Next slide.
When there's no more money left.
Yeah, so what we're showing here, next slide, is again the area chart here in the back, shows the capital resources, so you can see how that's drawing down over time, but at about 2016, you can see that, so kind of the tan bar is the capital program requirements, and the orange bar is your annual debt service payments. So there's about $5 million a year in capital program and about just under $4 million in annual debt service payments. And so, yes, your current cash is sufficient to continue that practice of paying for that until about 2016, when it starts dropping below what those requirements are and running out through the end of the study period. So the issue that we're looking to address in our recommendation for the change of policy is how to get these costs recovered in 2016, 17, and 18 once all the cash is drawn down from your capital resources. Okay, so before moving on there, did I answer all the questions on historical connection charge levels? And
Schmidt?
Mr. Mayor, just want to clarify. All of our debt service with the sewer is only $4 million a year?
Correct.
That's all we pay
The
in
sanitary
debt service?
sewer is about $3.7 million.
All of our outstanding
currently.
bonds?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so then moving forward to what our recommendation is going forward is phasing out the practice of paying for debt service out of the connection charges. So you can see as the orange bar is eliminated, and reduces every year and is eliminated in 2017 and 18. So that practice is where that debt service would no longer be paid for with your capital connection charges and capital reserves, but paid for instead through your operating account generated from rates. And that will be reflected in a chart here, the next couple of slides, of what that looks like. So again, just to kind of reiterate what the scenarios are that we've put forward for your consideration, we've titled them One is Status Quo, and that is maintaining the current utility practices that I just reviewed. The impacts of maintaining the status quo is the drawdown of your capital reserves over the study period, at which point there would be insufficient cash around the year 2016 to pay your debt service for the remaining study period. That would, without any changes, that would result in higher rate increases required in the next few years. The recommendation then...
Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
Okay, we just asked the question 3 different times about
Sure.
how we're paying for debt service.
Yes.
And you said it's the excess connection fees. Then you have up here that we're doing it from capital reserves. Is that capital improvement?
Capital reserves are connection fees.
Phase out the use of capital funds for debt service?
Yes.
So there's not going to be any.
There's not going to be any by 2016.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So, isn't that true?
Yes. Yes.
But to me, it puts
Yes.
more stress on the ratepayers if you change in midstream now. Why is the higher rate going to be required for higher rates for increase required in the next study plan if you're taking away all the connection fees that you're using, you're paying debt service, right?
Right.
So if you move that to ratepayers paying for it, then you're going to put more stress on the ratepayers.
Yes, which is what I'm saying here. Higher rate increases required there. What we're saying is there isn't going to be cash reserves from connection charges available sufficient to do it. So it's, unless you eliminated your capital program, this is kind of the only option for how you could pay for your capital and your ongoing debt service.
Well, you know,
is
it's
to do that
interesting you
through
say this,
rates.
because 5 years ago, I remember having the same conversation,
Mm-hmm.
and I just want to point out that only one of us thought that was a good idea,
Mm-hmm.
to not pay debt service with connection fees, okay? So now we've come full circle, and we're being, now we're recommending what we should have been recommended 5 years ago.
This was the recommendation 5 years ago. It was not the implemented plan.
Oh, okay.
See, I'm confused.
I don't remember, because I was the only one to vote no, because I didn't like the idea of putting debt service on the connection fees.
I'm confused because if you're making debt payments from connection fees, okay, that takes the stress off of using the money that comes from our rates, right?
Correct.
So if you turn that around and not use any of the money that comes from connection fees and put that debt payment on the rates, then the rates are going to have to go up, are they not?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Mr. Schmidt, just wanted to make sure I understood that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I apologize. I'm
Oh, this
trying
is what
to,
we're here
you know,
for.
I don't have all the numbers in front of me, and you know, I'm going back for a couple of years' worth of meetings of talking about this, and, you know, some real surprises that we've had on this, so I apologize for, you know, if I misunderstand on things. And I want to clarify that everything you call capital funds for debt service is only reserves that we had from the years of excess sewer hookup to the actual expenses, that original chart you had. Everything we spent on debt service is only capital funds, what you call capital funds. There's no other money in there. In that chart right there, there's no other money that contributes to that fund except for this reserve.
It's this, right, so under this capital fund source of funding, it's annual connection charges, it's also some transfers from operating.
Okay, here we go.
Yeah,
Here
so,
we go.
yeah,
Now
there's
we're
also
getting
some.
down to the fact
Yes.
that, and my point is, we, as this council, you know, made a very tough decision to go 5% for 5 years increase
Right.
on the sewer. We were told at that time that the 5% increase was going to be used to go into the intercity and the aging 100-year system of infrastructure to replace that. Instead, what's happened is that 5% increase has gone for debt service on brand-new facilities that were done years ago, or, as the case just, you know, a couple years ago, to do a major expansion in the north part of town. So I want to make sure when we say capital funds, and I think that's where, you know, as an accountant, I'd like to know all these accounts broken down, because it makes it sound real simple that all the money we're spending is just reserves that we had from good years, and that's simply not the case.
There's the combination, certainly it's the annual contributions from capital, it's the previous collections that have been accumulated, it's any type of grants that have been used for capital projects, but they all go in the capital fund. Those sources, for example, grants, reimbursements, and debt proceeds, those funds have not been used to assist with paying with debt services. It's these three up here that we have highlighted, showing connection charges, transfers, and capital cash reserves have been used to pay for both a combination of debt service and capital projects.
And my point is just that 5 years ago, when we went to this system, we bought off onto it. As Mike is right, there was one person did not like the system. You know, that the money we had dedicated, and we've been charging the ratepayers, and I've defended every phone call that I've had for 5 years. I've defended that, you know, this was the right thing to do, but that money did not go for its intended use. It went for paying debt service majority instead of improvement of existing services. So those neighborhoods that 5 years ago, we can get all the charts out, that said they had 100-year-old sewer systems that needed to be replaced, we can sit here and say that we did not spend the money to replace those systems. Is that fair?
So I would have to defer to the
that's
finance
not a
director
question that you need to
to
be
look at
answering.
that.
It's not,
Yeah.
I mean,
Let's not shoot the messenger. It's just telling us what's going on. If there's other questions that we have of staff, let's make it to staff, not to the people making the presentation.
So I think one of
We have some
the,
more questions, Mr. Smith.
My question was just answered.
Mr. Ratty?
Oh. okay, wait.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. So again, one of the other things, just before moving on, just kind of point out here, it was projected that connection charges wouldn't be at the level that they had been historically. I think but they've come in somewhat less than what projections were at that time too. And then you can see sort of at the end here, we have, assuming that they're going to start building back up. So that's just for information right now. From the growth that we're projecting in this study period for connection charges, it's running at about 0.25% growth rate for the next couple years, and then moving up to about 0.5%, and then increasing up to about 1%. So we are showing kind of an increasing growth profile for the utility, where you can see in years 2017 and 18, connection charges will be climbing up from their current levels. Okay, so I'm just going to move, I think, past these slides that we touched on. We left off here where we're going to look at what the rate strategies would be for these two scenarios, the status quo or the recommended. Just another thing to mention here, both of the scenarios for generating rates assume the existing level of your environmental control fees and the existing level of your connection charges. Another note is that the current practice is to implement rates January 1st of each year where there's an indicated rate increase. Per direction from staff, we're assuming that any proposed increases here would be implemented August 1st for 2014, and then changing your implementation time till July 1st in subsequent years, and that was to align with your fiscal calendar years. So that would be something brought forward also for decision. I did mean October, thank you. Okay, so first looking at sanitary sewer, under the status quo, the blue bar and shows the annual operating expenditures. That's your salaries and wages and services and supplies. We have those kind of increasing annually with inflation at about 3% per year. The orange bar is the transfer to the effluent system from the sanitary system. That's for the disposal option for from sanitary to effluent to keep the effluent utility whole. The solid line shows where the current revenues are today under your existing rates. So you can see from 2013, 14, and 15, your current revenues are projected to cover the current projected expenditures, fairly consistent with what you say with what the last rate analysis was indicating. What we're looking at in the future for 2016, 17, and 18 is that those revenues would not be sufficient to then be able to help pay for this debt service to be paid for out of rates. And so the strategy here is to kind of have a smooth rate forecast of what would be needed to be able to change to that policy of paying for debt service out of rates. Also, in the recommended strategy, what we have is also implementing system reinvestment funding. That's this little purple box at the end. So currently, where I mentioned your current practice is if there are excess operating reserves in excess of your minimum operating days requirement, just for information, is about 60 days of O&M is the minimum balance recommendation. Anything over that has been transferred over to capital, so sort of serving as the system reinvestment funding policy. There just hasn't been a discrete funding policy. So this is starting right here as we phase out the payment of debt through connection charges, that we'd start phasing in system reinvestment funding to help fund your capital program, and that's starting in about 2018 at about 20% for the sanitary sewer, looking to have that kind of a policy phased in over 5 years. So 20% in this first year and then phasing it in over the next 4-year study period.
Do you get another question, Mr. Schmidt?
When does this rate change, the slope change? At some point, we're going to start paying off bonds. What year do we start paying off our first bond? on this. If I continue that chart out for 20 years, I should see my rates falling. Where do they fall?
If you're looking at debt service alone, if you didn't incur any new debt, your existing debt would certainly be falling off. What we don't know, because we've looked at a 6-year study period here as opposed to a 20-year study period, so we didn't run it out for 20 years, but if all else stayed the same and you didn't incur any more debt, you would expect that debt service to fall off, and then you would expect your profile to be more inflationary level for covering operating expenditures, but dropping off from that $3.8 or so million in debt service.
Is that part of your future scope, is to look at that? Because it's very possible that by year 2018 that things change, that we're paying debt off, and that curve changes.
It's not part of our current scope, but what the recommendation or general practice is that you would take a look at the study every 5 years. So this is looking at it from 2013 to 2018. That's the current scope study. And then it would probably likely be around the 2017-2018 timeframe you would be looking to take another look at the next 5-year, 6-year forecast.
And that is about the time that, going back to the connection charges chart, that our debt does, our first bonds start being paid off.
Falling off.
Now, would it be possible to get our debt schedule when that debt starts falling off?
Yeah.
And how
Yeah,
fast?
we have that out.
So we know, because I know that our latest debt was for 20 years, and that was 5 years ago.
5 years
So
ago.
at maximum, we should be, in 15 years, all of our debt paid off. So it's something, I think last I saw, there were 6 or 7 different loans that covered our debt, or bonds that we had to cover our debt.
Right. Yeah, so assuming no new debt incurred, then you would and capital staying at about the same level that it is, where it could handle being cash financed and no debt
Yeah, I don't
incurred,
think
you'd
we're
see the
interested in
slope
new
change.
debt.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so then looking at what the rate impacts are for that we're looking at a sample customer bill. Currently, the sanitary sewer rate for your residential customer is $15.85 per month is the bill. I believe that's billed quarterly, but it's a monthly bill shown here. Under the status quo, that would be increasing about, $1.27 in the first year. So this is $1.27 per month per year. The next year, $1.37, and so on. So over the study period, it would be an increase of $5.71 per month over your existing $15.85 bill. That's for the status quo scenario. Then the recommended, which has the change in the policy practice, increases that over the study period to about $7.71. So about a $2 difference over 5 years on between the two scenarios.
Mr. Schmidt?
We were saying status quo is status quo, but if our policy is that we don't have a rate change right now, right? That if we go January 1st, we have no adjustment in the rate changes?
Yeah, we haven't had one since last year.
Okay, so
The definition of status quo, and I'll go back here just so we can take another look at that as I walk through this. The definition of the status quo scenario is that you maintain your current utility practices of paying debt service out of the capital fund and not discretely funding system reinvestment funding. It's not a scenario about whether there's increases or not increases. It's about your financial policies.
we're having rate increases per status quo of $1.27, but we don't have a status quo right now because we're not doing a rate increase.
This is what we're bringing forth to showing you what rate increases would be needed in order to cover your costs in this 5-year forecast in order to fund your annual operating expenses and your capital projects and the fiscal policies. As I showed in this one chart, let me back up here, you could go 3 years. Sorry, I'm going to page back. You can see 2013, 2014, and 2015. Your current rate level, demonstrated by that black line, shows you have sufficient revenues. Go over here, under the status quo. Under the status quo, you have sufficient revenues here, so you would not have to have a rate increase under this scenario for the first 3 years. But then you would need a significantly larger rate increase for 2016, 17, and 18. And so what our proposal here is, if you select to stay with your existing practices, what page was I on? Your existing practices, you would need these rate increases proposed. Sorry, I'm doing my page ups here. I'll get back to where I was. So again, that would not be in your current profile because this is the first time it's being presented to you based on the analysis that we've done here.
If we just
Okay, so back to this page
follow
here.
on up with that, our existing, let's say status quo is 5% a year, is what we've done for the last 5 years, minus this year, because we're outside of our 5-year agreement. It would appear that we're looking now to go ahead and go to a 7 or 8% increase every year starting next year.
About an 8% increase under under this first scenario that we've titled status quo, and under the recommended, it's about 8.25.
Okay. And so, thank you. I appreciate it. You answered the question percentage-wise, so
Okay.
we'll be doing an 8% increase or so a year
Instead of your historical where you've been at about 5
5.
that we're comparing.
to pay debt service.
Okay.
Mr. Kerrigan?
Could you go back to that slide, because I see what you're saying. If we don't change our method, you're still saying we need a 5% increase a year?
8.
No, to stay status quo, we need 5%.
8.
For
Status quo, 8.
8,
8% a year.
yes.
Recommended
For
8.25.
recommended, 8.25. Yeah, so what it is.
Okay, so okay. And then what if we change? What percentage is that?
That's under the recommended here, that's 8.25. So the first one is 8% per year, 2014, 15, 16, and 17, and then there doesn't need to be an increase in 2018.
So you're saying in the next 5 years, we need a 50% increase,
Essentially.
Yeah, 46.
no matter what we do?
And with your current costs, with your current cost profile, your current capital program, and your current level of operating and maintenance expenditures, maintaining your operating fund balances.
You know, when I looked at your chart, nowhere in there did it say about how much we have in the bank. Don't we have 25 million in the bank for sewer?
It's about that, Jeff, you have those.
Okay. So where does that fit into your scenario? Did you even use that?
Oh, of course, certainly. Yeah, we
Okay.
have all of your cash, and it's separated as whether it's operating-related cash, and that is used to help cover all of your expenditures on your operating side, and then the money that you have for capital purposes is designated to help pay for your capital program.
Right, so even with that 25 million, you're still looking at a
Yes.
50% increase?
Yes.
Okay.
This includes your current revenues, all of your cash available, and your projected spending profile for 5 years.
Ms. Reddy?
And so if we went with the status quo, when we hit 2018, we would still need a significant rate increase somewhere, connection fees or operating, to deal with the fact that we couldn't pay our debt service. Is that correct?
You mean for the future?
Once we hit 2018, looking at that first chart that you had, if you don't raise enough on the operating side, you still have a problem in 2018.
Yes, yes. If the issue isn't rectified through rate increases, it will get worse in subsequent years as well.
And so if we stay with status quo, that problem hits us in 2018.
It will, if you stay with status quo and you do the proposed rate increases for status quo, it solves your problem staying with that existing policy. So each one of these scenarios, what this forecast here is what you would need to do to accomplish that scenario. And so if you stay with your existing practices, these are the rate increases that you would need to not change your policies. If you went with our recommended, we're recommending that, again, you start paying rates, debt service through rates, and start implementing system reinvestment funding, then you would need the level of increases shown on here. Both of these scenarios are designed to meet the goals of each one of these scenarios. So maybe I can go back, for example, status quo, this line, the bottom line here shows where you are, your current revenues against your current expenditures. Whenever, the bar exceeds the line, that means that a rate increase is needed. So what the dotted line is that's the profile if you did those rate increases that were recommended and shown here for the status quo scenario. That's essentially those 8% increases that we were talking about. If you did that, you would meet all of your needs for status quo. Then for the second scenario where we had mentioned that would be 8.25% per year, that's the profile that would help you accomplish scenarios under that one. So under either one of these scenarios, either one that you decided to implement, if you implemented the proposed rate strategy, you would be covering all of your costs into every year, including up through 2018. Does that answer your question?
Mr. Smith?
Okay. The status quo you're getting from the previous 5 years, because we had 8% increases the previous 5?
I think maybe to clarify, maybe the term status quo is causing some confusion. Status quo is not that you're maintaining the same level of increases that you have historically. Just the definition of status quo is that you're keeping your same practices.
Policies.
Your same policies. Nothing to do with what the increases have historically been. So maybe
and I don't know that we
naming
ever
of it-
had any policies. We every 5 years, we vote on sewer rates, which I think is a smart way to do it.
Right.
But status quo, makes me think that that's what we did the last 5 years, which I thought it was closer to 5%.
It's you did those policies the last 5 years,
Set the percentage.
not the percentage.
Just where you took the money from.
Yeah, it means for the last 5 years, your policy was to pay, connection
Debt service,
charges
connection fees.
out of capital charges. Yeah,
But we did build in an increase every year.
Yeah.
yes,
And was it 5%?
yes.
Then how come whenever I ask, everybody says, no, that's not what we did,
That
but that's
last,
what we
that
did.
last increase was January of 2012.
Yeah.
And so we're not.
So
by
we're in our
ordinance,
next
there are no
5-year
more-
period.
Yes.
Yeah, currently, there's no more rate increases.
So
Yeah, that was the last one.
the increase is actually going from 5 to 8%, or to 8.25%.
If you're continuing, yes, I understand what you're
Thank
saying.
you. I mean,
Yes, from
that's-
historically,
if we
you're
vote
going 5, now it's bumping up to 8 or 8.25. Yes, I understand your question there on the status quo. So I think maybe current practices might have been a better name
Yeah.
for the scenario to avoid that
So
confusion.
let me ask you about the recommendation. Why are you recommending to us to raise our rates more than we would have if we do status quo or current practices?
To
Why would
position,
we, and to me, in the past, had we not taken debt service from connection fees, then our rates would have, on the consumer side, would have went up a lot higher than they did, because we'd have needed more money each year to meet our demands. So now you're telling me you're recommending that we charge our ratepayers more money than we should by 0.25%?
not more money than you should. It's just it's a choice of policy.
Okay, so why do I want to take the more expensive policy rather than the less expensive policy?
Well, it would certainly be your choice. That's why we're presenting two scenarios here.
Okay.
The difference between the two, and that's why I'm kind of going back to here, on this chart here, is it just shows that your cash reserves are running down, and unless connection charges and growth
Sure.
pick up, there's going to be less capital monies to pay for your capital, and to continue your capital program, you will likely need to incur debt service,
Okay.
more debt.
All right.
So that's the recommendation. The difference going to this one is that you're building up that balance a little bit there in 2018 to position yourself for the next study period and
Okay.
not having to issue debt.
That's what I was interested in. Mr. Smith
Okay.
again, then Mr. Schmidt.
I guess what I'm not comprehending here. If we had enough money from our connection fees to pay for the debt, connection fees are going up, they're building more homes now these days, why couldn't we just maintain the 5% increase that we did the last 5 years, and we'll have more money just because of the connection fees going up, more connection fees?
You also have a different profile of a capital program. Your operating expenditures have gone up. I mean, we totally looked at a different profile from 5 years ago, so your costs are different than they were 5 years ago. Your operating expenditures, we've looked at taking them from this period going forward, and so maintaining what you did 5 years ago wouldn't cover the same
Okay,
cost
so let's say
profile.
we just keep it at 8%, and keep it with the connection fees.
That would be the status quo, current policy scenario I have, that you can certainly, that's certainly a choice.
No, we haven't done that yet. That goes, that status quo.
We haven't voted on it yet.
Status quo.
Status
In here-
quo means we do the same thing we've been doing.
The status quo in here is 8% increases. It's not flat. I'm going to go back up to here, to that chart where we show the differences. So I'm just going to rename my status quo from here on out to current policies. So this status quo is under your current policies with your current capital program and your current operating and maintenance expenditures. This one would be 8% increases 2014, 15, 16, and 17, and then there wouldn't be an increase in 2018. That's if you stayed with your current practices. If you went with the recommended practices, it would be an 8.25% increase every year, 2014 through 2018. So that's where you get that difference of $5.71 versus $7.71 is that $2 difference between the selection. And again, these are equal. These are valid choices, either scenario. That's why they're presented to get you the revenues that you're projected to need.
Okay, more questions, Mr. Schmidt?
Dan, when we talk about capital projects, are we talking about actual inline, inside the city of Sparks sewer lines, things that, we use? Are we talking about capital improvements at the sewer plant, which is a joint fund? Are we talking about both of those combined?
Both combined. You're talking about any type of replacement needs for your sewer lines, any type of expansion needs, any types of upgrades to your treatment facilities, any type of capital capital project.
So if we look at this from a consumer point of view, and I'm going to look at this from the taxpayer's point of view, is that rate of inflation has been 2 to 3% for the last 5 years. We've been charging 5% for the last 5 years. So we already bring in more money than inflation says to do it. Now we're coming back and saying our cost to run this sewer plant is now actually almost 3 times the cost of inflation to run the sewer plant and to provide services 3 times the cost of inflation. Is that basically what we're trying to tell the public?
Your operating expenditures are consistent with inflation. But in addition to inflationary costs, you have your existing debt service that you're paying for, you have the fiscal policies, and you have the capital program. So generally speaking, your capital program does exceed, and when you're talking inflation, you're usually looking at your operating expenditures would increase with inflation. And then over and above that, utilities are dependent on what your capital needs are.
So 8% inflation, or 8% increase, how much goes to in-the-street sewer pipes versus the sewer facility?
The bulk of this is Tumwharf.
Say that again?
The bulk of the capital is Tumwharf.
So the bulk of the increase is the sewer plant, bulk being 95%?
It's probably closer to 75.
So we can still see none of the 100-year sewer lines inside the city being replaced, is that right?
No, we've replaced or rehabbed a significant portion every year.
So the sewer plant is our, in terms of our problem.
Mm-hmm.
That's our problem, is the sewer plant, right?
Biggest cost expenditure.
Yeah. But cost expenditures are problems in this business.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, thank you.
Mr. Lawson?
This whole presentation has confused me to the point where I'm throwing it out, because in my mind, status quo current policies are, it is what it is today. If we don't do anything tomorrow, it's going to be the same. So the number should be flat. So that's where the decision needs to be made. You're giving me an option of raise rates or raise rates. I don't have any maneuverability in that area.
Yeah. So
Well, that's not the way it is. It's the way it is we are at the $15.85, and we'll be at $50.85 if we don't do anything next year.
Okay, so again, I apologize for the use of the status quo. That the status quo does not mean that you don't do anything else for your utility beyond what you're doing now. It just means the change in policies. What you're speaking of, I understand what you're looking at, is if you don't do anything, that means you don't do any more capital than what you're doing right now, and you don't do anything, you have a 0% increase every year. So we did kind of look at that as what would happen, baseline, if you had the current stuff and had a 0% increase. With your current capital program and inflation, there is a need for increase. I mean, I could say to you, you're not going to increase any of your costs, so don't have a rate increase. I think forecasting generally indicates that you need to plan for inflation, and you need to plan for replacing part of your system, and you need to plan for fixing your treatment plant and doing your expansion projects. So we were not requested to actually do a scenario where you don't do anything, because that simply is you don't do anything, you don't have any rate increases. There's really no scenario to develop. That's always an option to do don't go beyond where you are now. We just didn't prepare a specific scenario. But that would essentially involve keeping your O&M at its current level, policies at its current level, and looking at deferring your capital program. So I think I'd have to maybe defer, if that's practical.
I think we've pretty much deferred too many capital improvement programs as it is, and the longer we go without doing something, we had a near fatality miss deal that we just did out there 6 months ago or 5 months ago. That was a pretty bad deal, could have been tremendously bad, and those are the kind of things that we can expect if we don't raise some more money for capital improvements in operating expenses. Those are the kind of things that we can expect to happen in the future. So we can bite the bullet or kick the can down the road, whichever you want to do. How many more things or slides do you have, Karen?
Well, there's a section on cost of service and changing rate structures and moving forward with that. But if that's something that we should delay until we get a revenue requirement scenario that is solid for going forward, we can always do that.
I'd be more comfortable knowing that. When I go to my constituents, they can say, well, you have two choices. We're going to raise your rate or we're going to raise your rate. But why are we raising the rate? We have $25 million. We have some money over here. I need to have more of a reason, and I don't see it here.
So you need to see more of the detail of the analysis. We could certainly show that. We could show the capital improvement program.
When you take a look at the numbers, if you just stretch it out from the last 5 years and then the upcoming 5 years, you're looking at a 65% increase in rates in this city. And then somebody's going to ask me, what is it that you know of that has increased 65% in the last 10 years, besides unemployment and gasoline?
Go ahead, Neil.
For the record, Neil Cruz, Deputy City Manager for Community Services. If it's okay with you, Mayor Martini, and the balance of the council, I would like to draw this presentation to a close. We came here with what I believed was good information, but we obviously missed the mark here today in making our presentation to you. So I would ask for your indulgence to come back to a future City Council agenda with a better presentation that's targeted towards you. Because as I'm sitting in the back and watching today, we clearly did not do that. We can see that in your questions. So we'll draw it to a close if that's okay, and come back and do better in the future.
Everybody okay with that? Mr. Addy, go ahead.
I think I've been pretty quiet. I appreciate what you're saying, Neil, but I wasn't here for the 2005, so I think the four of you may be a little bit ahead of the two of us and having gone through this once before, so I just want to make sure before you go away and come back again that I'm understanding. But it seems to me like that the decision that was made in the last cycle was to allow growth to pay the bulk of the costs of capital. Because by doing connection fees, you're assuming there's new connections and new connections and new connections, and then therefore that pays for capital. And if you look at this chart, I mean, to me, this is the chart that tells the story. Those connection fees dropped off like a lead balloon, we all know when, not a big surprise as to when, and even with some projections of recovery, that funding source is gone. And so that funding source, therefore, so that puts pressure on operating. And so the reason that and I think the reason the current policy doesn't even work is because there was what we did for 5 years, and then there's what we've done for the last year and a half, which is nothing. So current is actually 0. But, moving past that wordsmithing, operating, no matter what, it's operating that's going to has to take the hit because there's no connection service fees to do it. And that's just the bottom line. And so whether we make a policy shift or not, you end up with an 8% problem on the operating side because you don't have connection charges. So unless we do something to change that, wave our magic wand and increase development back to 2005 levels, we're going to have to raise rates. I think your presentation was fine.
Yeah.
I mean, I really don't think there's anything here that's unclear. I think, some terminology that we got caught up on that we could have done maybe a little bit differently. But that is the tough decision that is put before us, is that rates have to go up because growth has slowed down significantly from our assumptions from when this was done the last time. Is that true?
That is true.
Yes, it is.
Okay. So what I'm struggling with, if you're going to come back, is a little bit more maybe clarification, a little bit more of an argument for why changing that policy is so important. I think that's where there could be just a little bit more oomph to the presentation.
A little bit
if
of
you will.
detail on showing the flow of funds and where it's going.
And why that policy shift is what you're recommending.
Okay.
Mr. Schmidt?
Mr. Mayor, and, I look at something as, when it comes to dollars and cents, I'm one of those bean counters, and that's just the way I am, and that's the way it's going to be. And I look at something that you're asking that has been funded by the City Council above and beyond inflation cost. I see no signs of reduction of how you're reducing cost in this facility. I see a facility that's continuing falling apart and not being maintained. And I think, to me, if I was advising a company, I'll say it again, and I said, in meeting after meeting after meeting, you get rid of your problem. The sewer plant is something that's going to be an anchor on this city for a long time to come because it has not been handled properly. We need to accept that as a city, that we haven't done the right things with this thing. And we need to spin off an organization such as TAMWA that can put a joint thing out there, committee or group on out there, that their primary focus is operating a sewer facility. It's not about paving streets. It's not about mowing grass. It's not a distraction of forces. It's a concentration on how to run and operate a sewer facility that can be operated within the cost limits of inflation. And I want to see how we're reducing costs for this facility. Because everything I've seen in the last 12 years is just keeps going on up. And I've seen money being, no pun intended, flushed because it's not being spent where it's supposed to be, and it's costing us more money to operate something that we've budgeted for. So I'm going to put it on out that this facility needs to be separated from the liability of this city. It needs to be a public agency like TAMWA to do it, and the taxpayers of this community is not going to be hit with 8 to 10% increases every single year because we've done something wrong. And I think that falls right on the City Council, and I'll take responsibility for it. We spent more money in bonds we should have. We haven't operated that facility as we've been told it's been operated, and I think we need to follow an entirely different path than just saying, let's just keep raising people's rates. Because sooner or later, people are going to get tired of this. Because this is something that no one has a choice on. No one except for 5 people have a choice in this community on what that's going to cost. Once we do this, every single user has to pay that bill every quarter, whether they like it or not. I'd like to see a different approach on this. Thank you.
Mr. Carrigan.
Thank you. Yeah, I want to agree with Julie. I didn't see anything wrong with this presentation at all.
No.
The one thing that I said 5 years ago, and I'll say it again, and I think staff was recommended it 5 years ago, is you never hook debt service to growth. Okay, and we didn't do that with TAMWA. We hooked at the rates and said, look, growth is going to pay for itself, but when you talk about debt service, you need something stable, and growth is not stable, and we can surely see that. But I understand where Ed's coming from, because when you bring us something to a city council and say the only 2 options are the raise rates or raise rates, that's the part I have a hard time with. Give me I'd like to see some numbers in between that. I mean, is there a way to do it? The way you're presenting it, it's either 8% or 8%. And if we don't, what happens if we don't? What if we go to 5%?
And we will bring that scenario
Okay,
forward.
you see
Absolutely,
okay.
I see where you're coming from.
Okay. Because that's the thing that, when you sit there, and you got to remember that for all of us that vote on this, we're going to be the ones that get the phone call, and somebody's going to say, explain to me what's gone up 8% a year, okay?
Yes.
In the last couple of years, besides gasoline and unemployment. Like I said, I can't think of anything else. Because I can tell you right now, seriously, if Nevada Energy was going to raise rates 8% a year for the next 5 years, you don't think that somebody would be out in front of there with pitchforks going after them? Okay, so that's kind of the only thing that I thought was lacking on here, is give me some kind of range and see where we can go mathematically, if you wouldn't mind.
Okay.
But I agree with you 100%. The status quo, I don't like it. I didn't like it 5 years ago. That's why I didn't vote for it, and I think we should change it because it's just death, okay, hanging out there.
Mr. Smith?
You know, I think we do it right by setting rates out 4 years, 5 years, and we've done it in the past, and when people ask me questions and how come our rates are going up, I say, well, we're the only entity in the area that can actually fix our infrastructure. We have the money to do it. The terminology is what got me a little bit nuts today, because I just, status quo is status quo, in my book. My math is a little bit different than Councilman Kerrigan's. I show about a 26% increase over the first scenario and 32 on the second.
36.05% increase on status quo, 48.64 increase on the recommended.
Okay.
Plus the 25%, if you're going to go for 10 years.
Well, we never brought 10 years. Is that
No,
what we're
no,
talking about?
we already did that.
Where's the 10 years come from?
Well, you want to go back 5 years, we had a 5% increase.
Oh,
each
well,
year.
okay, well, I'll clarify
Yeah,
what
we're
I'm
going
saying
from
here.
existing.
I do
Well, you
think we
can't
need to
forget
raise,
history.
I think we do need to raise rates. My remarks were, we only went up 5% a year the last 5 years.
Right.
And we had a lot of confusion tied to
Okay, so
the wording.
I do agree that we need to raise the sewer rates. I don't have a problem with that. It's just how we get there.
We will do a better job.
Yeah, same here. I think I understand what the problem is. The problem here is that we're going to have to raise rates, it looks like, and nobody wants to do that. Understand that. But I think the past practice or status quo or whatever you want to call it was worked fine. I think we saved our ratepayers some money during those years by using connection fees to pay for our debt service. Had we put that money on the rates, that debt service of whatever it was, $3 million or something a year, would have had to raise our rates for the consumer sooner. So I think it worked fine. And again, I look at, do we want to raise it 8 or 8 1/4? Not 1/4% is not much, but it's something. So you'll put this on another
Yes, sir.
another meeting. and
Another
we'll
meeting agenda.
Get at it. Okay. Thanks, ladies. We appreciate your time, and we didn't mean to abuse you. I didn't want.
That is
like I said,
okay.
we didn't want to shoot the messenger here. You're just bringing us scenarios. So, thanks. Okay, let's move on to consent items. Anybody want to pull a consent item? Mr. Kerrigan.
5.6.
Anyone else? Okay, looking for a motion? Mr. Schmidt?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Make a motion to approve item 5.1 through 5.5.
Do you have a second? Mr. Reddy.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Schmidt, seconded by Councilwoman Reddy to approve 5.1 through 5.5. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Passes unanimously. 5.6, Mr. Kerrigan.
No, I just wanted to point out, I don't know if anybody knows where the Aspen Glen Bar is. It just so happens it's in my ward. Not that I was going to use a word that I stumbled upon it a couple weeks ago, but I better watch out when I say that.
You walked in and stumbled out.
But anyway, I met the owner, and I thought he looked familiar when I saw him. And I just wanted to point out that the guy used to be a major league reliever.
Yeah.
He was a lefty I think he started off with the Twins. I saw him, I think he went to the Cubs too. But anyway, nice guy, and he's changing, just a local businessman, changing the kind of the atmosphere of the place. It's a little bit more sportsy and stuff. But I was hoping he'd be here today because you don't get many major leaguers, and he lives in Sparks. I think he lives out at the marina somewhere.
That's
But
great.
anyway, he's a nice guy, and maybe if you need a drink, you can go by and help him out. I'm sure that I'll probably be hanging out there now that Vista Grill closed down.
You can get a autograph.
Yeah, I will now.
Mr. Schmidt.
I want to agree with Mr. Kerrigan. The place is very hospitable and a great little establishment. We appreciate his investment in the community.
With that, I'll make a motion to approve 5.6.
we have a second, Mr. Schmidt? Second. Moved by Councilman Kerrigan, seconded by Councilman Schmidt to approve 5.6. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Passes unanimously. 6.1 we've done. 6.2, consideration and possible acceptance of an interlocal agreement between Washoe County Sheriff's Office and the Sparks Police Department on extradition services. Chief Allen, welcome.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, members of council. We just come before you to renew a common practice of the police department for another 3-year cycle in which we outsource our extradition services through the Washoe County Sheriff's Office. They have been providing the service since 2003, and this has been mutually beneficial to both organizations, where it took us out of the extradition business and allowed us to focus on our activities in-house rather than sending our resources across the country and state to bring back those offenders that need to face court and trial. So basically, this is another 3-year renewal. There is a slight rate increase. This amount is up to $30,000 a year. However, over the course of the last 5 fiscal years, we have not reached anywhere close to that $30,000 threshold, commonly in the area around $12,000 to $14,000 per year.
Questions for Chief Allen? If not, looking for a motion. Mr. Smith.
Move to approve the interlocal agreement with the Washoe County Sheriff's Office and authorize the mayor and city clerk to continue the agreement.
Mr. Lawson. Second. Moved by Councilman Smith, seconded by Councilman Lawson to approve 6.2. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Passed unanimously. Thanks, Chief.
Thank you.
Okay, 6.3, consideration and possible approval of an amendment to extend the interlocal agreement between the City of Sparks and City of Reno by 6 months to complete the construction of improvements to the Community Assistance Center located on Record Street in the City of Reno. Mr. Graham, welcome.
Mayor, City Council, and thank you. What I'd like to bring before you is the consideration of approval of an extension for the CAC. The CAC is the Community Assistance Center, Homeless Center, and we're in the process of this project. We needed more time. We're currently in progress, and we ran into some issues as far as completing it. And this 6 months extension, we feel would accommodate completion of this project. It's been this particular item since 2011. It's a reimbursement to the City of Reno, and we've been trying to reconcile completion, bring it to fruition, and that's what's before.
Questions for George? Mr. Schmidt?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. George, what do you mean we're trying to complete reconciling?
It's reimbursement to City of Reno. If we go back to 2011, there were some things that in the past, whereas we did not have an environmental study, and so and we had to have that done, and then we had to get it approval just to continue with the project. And so now we're in the process of working on the project for the improvements to the Community Assistance Center. And we feel within this 6 months of time that we can complete this. Whereas this particular item, if we go back to 2011.
So the costs are escalating on the project?
Costs? No, not really, no. No, we're still holding at $188,000, which we committed from back then.
But the cost to us is not escalating, but the cost of the project is escalating. If you have to do an environmental study and all that, those are additional costs that are being done on the project.
No, we had to do that as part of the review back then, and it's already caught inside the funding that we are just reimbursing the City of Reno.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Mr. Lawson.
I happened to take a tour of this facility a couple weeks ago. Pretty impressive, so I'm in favor of continuing on, getting it done. Thanks.
Ms. Ratty.
Well, I'm of the interlocal agreement between the City of Sparks and City of Reno to extend the time of completion by 6 months to complete the improvements to the CAC on Record Street in the City of Reno.
Mr. Kerrigan. Second. Moved by Councilwoman Ratty, seconded by Councilman Kerrigan to approve 6.3. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Passed unanimously. Thanks, George.
Thank you all.
6.4, consideration and possible approval of the interlocal cooperative agreement for reimbursement between the City of Sparks and Truckee Meadows Water Authority for the C Street Sewer Rehabilitation Project. Very timely to bring a sewer project.
Chris Cobb, Capital Projects Manager, for the record. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I'm here before you this evening, and actually, the follow-on item follows with this 6.5. 6.4 is the part of the interlocal agreement with the Truckee Meadows Water Authority. They bid the project with us that's recognized in 6.5 for the C Street sewer rehabilitation. This is for a single block of sewer rehab that was discovered during our assessment practices. That portion of that sewer along there has caved in on the top of it. We've coordinated with our utilities. NV Energy has already gone through there and done their gas line work that they needed to do. Tama had yet to do the water line work that they want to do while we're in there at the same time doing our sewer. This is definitely a benefit to our residents, not having 3 different contractors at 3 different times ripping up the street. By doing this interlocal agreement, the project will happen together with the sewer rehab and the Tama water line. Followed behind it, the street will be repaved completely, curb, gutter, and sidewalk. There are 5 laterals that will be redone with the project. There will be cleanouts behind the walk. So by you approving, if you do this evening, 6.4, you're authorizing that interlocal agreement, which has already been approved at the Tumwa Board. The follow-on item, 6.5, would be actually awarding the project to the contractor to do the work.
So you want to cover 6.5 at the same time? You got anything to say about 6.5?
6.5, just as I said, you're looking at about 500 feet of 10-inch sewer. Okay. It's about 10 feet deep that we're doing. As I said, the road will be completely repaved through there because by the time we're getting done with it, it's going to be pretty chewed up. Okay. With that, you'll be doing the curb, gutter, and sidewalk.
Questions on 6.4 or 6.5? Ms. Ratty.
I'm sorry if it was in there and I missed it, but what's the timing?
The timing, we look to start this, hopefully with your approval tonight, you would be in September, October. We plan to beat the weather.
Okay, no further questions. Looking for a motion on 6.4? Ms. Ratty.
I move to approve the interlocal cooperative agreement for reimbursement between the City of Sparks and the Truckee Meadows Water Authority for the C Street Sewer Rehabilitation Project.
Do you have a second? Mr. Kerrigan.
Second.
Moved by Councilwoman Ratty, seconded by Councilman Kerrigan to approve 6.4 as outlined by staff. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Passes unanimously. Questions on 6.5? Mr. Schmidt.
No questions, sorry, Mr.
Go ahead. You want to make a motion? Go ahead, Julia.
To award the C Street Sewer Rehabilitation Project to Campbell Construction Company in the amount of $339,254.80.
Mr. Schmidt. Second. Moved by Councilwoman Ratty, seconded by Councilman Schmidt to approve 6.5 as outlined by staff. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Passed unanimously. Thanks, Chris. Appreciate it.
Don't get rid of me this easy.
Oh, yeah, don't?
No, sir.
You got Mo?
I've got
6.6. You got what?
Excited.
Good. Since we've been here talking, the price hasn't gone up, has it?
No, sir.
Because I know,
It's gone from 8 to 8.25.
Yeah. With inflation and everything, you're killing us here, pal. 6.6, consideration and possible approval of the City Hall electrical upgrade project to Briggs Electric and Inc. in the amount of $736,700. Go for it.
Thank you. Again, Chris Cobb, Capital Projects Manager for the City of Sparks. For the record, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I'm actually really pleased to have in front of you an electrical upgrade for City Hall. Obviously, City Hall was built, initially in 1968 with several phases to follow. There are so many panels piggybacked on top of one another. It's grounded through the conduits. It's a nightmare, especially for, obviously, our new computers. IT's just having a nightmare. With this upgrade, it will be the entire city hall and system. Fortunately, we were very lucky. NV Energy was nice enough to replace the transformer out front a few weeks ago, and that blew up on us during an electrical storm. That would be part of the project, but it's now that's being already done. We will be moving that switchgear that you see out in the courtyard. You walk by, that'll be moved closer out in the parking lot. We'll have all new panels that'll have new grounds, three-wire system. So this will be a huge benefit, and it'll be the first step in allowing us to then look at HVAC mechanical upgrades to follow. But we have to do this step first. So not only will you see a benefit as members of the council, your citizens and your staff will see a lot of benefit to this. Additionally, one thing that should be noted is the alternates will provide for 2 electrical car charging stations out in the front parking lot. Fleet, Ron Corman is already looking at the possibility having 2 city vehicles that would be used as pull cars to use 2 of those stations. The other 2 would be for anybody coming in from the public that needed to charge their vehicle while doing business at the city.
That was my question. How many electrical vehicles do we have?
So we currently have none,
Okay.
to my knowledge.
Okay. It's fine. I just saw the charging stations. I'm
We'll be
wondering,
prepared
where
when
do
we
we
get
get them? You answered the question. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Questions? Ms. Ratty?
Move to approve the City Hall electrical upgrade project to Briggs Electric, Inc. in the total amount of $736,700.
Mr. Schmidt?
Second.
Oops, sorry.
Wrong Smith.
No, he was first. Mr. Schmidt?
That's all right, Mr. Smith.
No, go ahead.
No, that's okay.
Second.
You're senior.
We have a motion by Ms. Ratty, seconded by Mr. Smith to approve 6.6. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Passes unanimously. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Spent a lot of money today.
Yes, sir.
6.7, consideration of possible, what's that?
We're still going.
I know. Consideration of possible approval of payments totaling $417,371 to 5 property owners for temporary construction easements and storm drains, pipeline easements for the North Truckee Drain project. Go ahead, Andy.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. For the record, Andy Hummel, utility manager for the city of Sparks. Before I start on this one, in the packet we had a scanning error. If you downloaded the attachments, we had one that was labeled Corey easements. That was actually Washoe County School District, made it in there twice. So legal has advised me that I can give you those copies for Corey to address that, since there's actually no council's signature on that. It's for the payment.
Okay.
So with that, as I said, it's
Light reading.
5 properties that are for consideration for payment of temporary and permanent storm drain and construction easements, the North Truckee Drain project. With this, we're down to a few remaining parcels to do the project. Show a map, but so we essentially have this parcel in here still remaining from the first phase. Then we have some utility impacts that we'd like to get construction easement there. That is Larkin Circle. Yeah, that we're down there. So with that, any questions?
Questions, Mr. Smith?
So, these 5 businesses are agreeing to the easements that we need, and how many are left that aren't agreeing?
It's not that they're not agreeing, we just are not through the process with those property owners
So
yet.
what's the holdup on how many?
MMK is really the big one. That's this parcel here. He also happens to be the most impacted. We're cutting into his parking lot a significant amount, so he's got a large number of trucks. It's a big warehouse. So there's been a lot of negotiation back and forth as to how we're going to maintain loading docks, things like that, so that his tenants aren't impacted. He has 14 different tenants in there, so making sure that they all stay happy. None of them decide in the middle of this that, hey, we can move across town and abandon him.
So
things
he's
like
not
that.
saying yes, he's not saying no, he's saying,
He is definitely in favor of the project. He has told us so. It's just getting to that negotiation to make sure that his tenants are not impacted negatively while we do this.
well, I would ask that we get those negotiations underway. Somehow, we received $5 million from the flood project to start this project in July, and we're way past July. And this business holds us up till whenever he wants to come and sit and talk, or we haven't been there.
Oh, no, we have met with him extensively over the last 2 years, trying to work
Can we
these.
force the issue? What can we do?
You could, if you wanted, always go to condemnation, but
Well, we don't
this
want to
has
do
been a
that.
very
What do we need to
willing-
do to, what do we need to do to get this guy?
I think
one way or the
we are
other?
really close on a memo of understanding with him as to temporary loading docks and how those are going to be handled so that his tenants can be able to load their trucks, things like that, while we're in there working, and that's really the last thing we have to work out with
Okay,
him.
and I understand those concerns, so
Yeah.
as a city, let's do whatever we have to do to get this thing sealed up, and we can start construction on that, whatever Neil is, okay?
Yep.
Thank you.
Mr. Kerrigan?
Are these upfront costs? Because I know they're for 5-year easements. Do we pay them upfront?
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Schmidt?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Couple questions. And I guess I didn't quite get the answer. How many more easements do we have to negotiate here?
For this first phase, there's two.
Two
There's
more
the
to
one
go.
on MMK, and then we get a temporary construction easement from this parcel here, Worthen. We have some utilities that we're relocating down that street that it's really close without those.
My question is timing here. Let's say that we have two easements and one of them does not want to do anything. We don't proceed with the project, right? We can't proceed with the project. We're stopped until
Yeah,
all
we-
easements are obtained.
We can make some minor changes for this first phase if MMK came through and Worthen didn't.
I heard the word if in there, if they came through. So we go and spend $400,000 today, which I have no problem, we've got appraisers with everybody, that's the cost to do it, but that 5-year clock starts.
Yep.
My concern is that we've been talking to all these owners at the same time, everything, we've already approved one, that clock has started. If we have an owner that says, I'm not really comfortable with this, and we drag 2, 3, God forbid, 4 years down the road, all this is for naught. How important is it that we go ahead and approve this without the other two attached to this?
Other than good faith from the city to those owners that we've already negotiated with, that's the main thing.
See, my problem is spending $400,000 of taxpayer money waiting for two other people to say that they're willing to go along with this thing. So once I've spent the money, I don't have anything technically until the other two say, well, I'm ready to go. Let's do this. And you don't have a time frame. You have a comfort level that you're about ready to open up a memo of understanding. But everybody's been involved the same time length, right?
Yes and no. Some of those other parcels, there's very little impact. They were quick and easy. Where do we sign? We understand, great. Some of them, a lot more impact. John Phillips was another one at the end there that's a lot of impact to his property as well. And that was one of the last ones that we got signed.
I'm waiting for something that makes me feel really great that this is right around the corner and it can happen any day now, that we've been working on it for 8 months and everybody's about ready to sign up.
Yeah, and we have talked to him today, last week. We have a lot of communication with this property owner. And he was there with the last flood. He definitely understands why this is important.
Mr. Smith?
Mr. Schmidt's got a good point there. When Councilman Kerrigan and I were working a deal on the sound walls in Vista, it was all or nothing. So if there were some homeowners that didn't want the sound wall, they didn't get them. And there was 6 homes over there, Mike, that didn't get sound walls because they couldn't come to an agreement. He's right. If we spend $500,000 and these guys just hold out for more money, whatever the case may be, I don't know. Maybe we should bring this back.
your prerogative, for sure.
Mr. Schmidt?
Mr. Mayor, and if that's the direction, is there a way that we could go through and say we'll give $10,000 as good faith money, bring that back to the council in 2 weeks and say we'll give $10,000 based upon your agreement? So we're showing good faith. We're willing to go down that path. I don't know. It's up to legal counsel and everything else here on this. I mean, I just think we're looking at spending $400,000, $500,000. The clock's already running on this thing.
No, no, we can't do that. The easements are what they are. There's temporary and construction easements. The value based upon FHWA and takings has been computed, and it's been set by different appraisals.
For the record, David Ville, contract real property agent. I am the one negotiating them. We have made offers. They have accepted under the Uniform Act. You can say yes, you can say no, but you can't give them just a little bit or whatever. It's all or nothing. As far as I share your frustrations, and I understand that, but comparing your walls to this project is not even close.
What does that mean?
The walls are simple. This is not simple. We're impacting a gentleman. He's not disagreeing. He wants the project. He's got 14 tenants that can't get their trucks in and out unless we can figure out some intelligent way to do it. We've been working with him to do that. He's been working with his tenants to do that. As of last Friday, we're that close to an agreement with him. Can I tell you that it's actually going to sign it? No, I can't. But he will. There's every indication that he will. The other property owner, he lives in Battle Mountain, and this is a rental property for him, and he hasn't been too excited about it, so I did my best to get him excited. I will talk to his partner tomorrow. We will get his signature.
Is it all or nothing today? I mean, if you brought it back in 2 weeks, will there be any... I mean, I applaud the landowners that have come to the table, and you've been able to negotiate, but...
As Andy said, they were fairly simple. MMK is not simple. It's a very, very difficult project. To get through that area with what we need to do our project, we're really impacting this gentleman's business. So we have worked really hard to develop an MOU that is acceptable to everybody. And we're at that point, I believe. Can I give you absolutely assurances? No, I cannot, because it's a negotiation. But I believe that both of them in Phase 1 will sign shortly. I would hate to see the council not approve them, because that's going to make it very difficult for me to go back and say, well, the council isn't sure because we have two holdouts. Well, we're not holdouts. That's a bad word. We have two people who have yet to sign. That will make it more difficult for us. You can certainly delay it, and I can defend that.
Mr. Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On your negotiations, is the price negotiated? Is that an agreement that you have right now? Is the price? The only thing we're worried about is how to get those trucks in and out of there?
Well, one follows the other. First of all, we got to figure out how we're going to do it. And then secondly, the appraisal, which has to be redone because of the time frame. We're going to need about 2 more weeks from now, or Monday, to update the old appraisal. And then we'll need about a week for another review appraisal. And then we will present the offer to MMK.
So there's no discussion of price at this point, is what I'm hearing.
There is none.
So we haven't even...
We have not made him an offer.
So does he even have an idea? Do we have an idea what he is expecting?
No.
How about the other property owner? Do we have numbers and everything? And
we have made an offer to the other Reno Investment Company. He has the dollars. Like I said, he lives up in Battle Mountain. He has no objection. It just hasn't been important to him. I did try to talk to him Friday. He was out chasing cattle. I will talk to him again, and I will talk to his partner.
I guess my problem is $500,000 is important to me. very important to me. That's my job to go ahead and do that. And the importance of my decision is based upon somebody who is not important to them. And that makes me uncomfortable. I'm actually more comfortable with the one that has all the problems because they're in serious negotiations, and we're only talking dollar amounts here, which, could be another, but I'm more concerned about someone who has really no interest in.
No, it isn't a matter of interest. It's just, okay, maybe it is. He's told me time and again, it's no problem. He will sign it, and he will.
But we don't have if we offer him $1 million, he would sign?
No, we're not going to offer him $1 million.
Okay, so we don't know what his I'm willing to sign the agreement cost is and what our willing to sign the agreement cost is. We have
made an offer to him. He does know what our offer is. He has said he will accept it. He just hasn't done it yet.
Thank you.
Mr. Kerrigan.
Well, I think it's important to wrap these up. We're not talking about buying anybody's land. These are just easements so we can dig a hole and put a pipe through it, and then it'll be covered back up. So I don't think that, I understand that it's a problem for him temporarily, but then after it gets paved over, then we won't have a problem anymore. So with that being said, I want to make a motion that we approve the payments.
Mr. Lawson. I'll second. We have a motion by Mr. Kerrigan, seconded by Mr. Lawson. Questions, Mr. Schmidt?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Without these two, is there any work to be done?
There is always something that could be done out there. It'd be small. Yeah.
A minor portion of the project can be done.
Yeah, if we came to that.
Any other questions? Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Everyone understand the motion? Seeing no further questions, please vote. Mr. Ratty. Passes 4-1. Thank you. Thanks, gentlemen. Appreciate it. Time to move on with this project. Something. More money. 6.8, consideration and possible adoption of resolution number 3245, authorizing the transfer of the City of Sparks 2013 state volume bond capacity of $4,787,115.21 to the Nevada Department of Business and Industry for first-time home buyers. Armando, go ahead.
Mayor Martini, members of the council, Armando Ornelas, city planner. This is an item of business that we do annually, usually this month. And basically, this is a transfer of the city's authority to issue tax-exempt bonds that's allocated from the federal government to the state down to the local governments. In past years, we've allocated it to the Nevada Housing Division for their single-family mortgage program, as well as to Nevada Rural Housing. This year, Nevada Rural Housing informed us that they were not looking for a portion of that, so this recommendation is to allocate the entire cap amount to the state for their first-time homebuyers program.
Questions for Armando? No questions? Looking for a motion. He's ready.
I move for the adoption of resolution number 3245 to authorize the transfer of the city's 2013 tax-exempt bond volume capacity to the Nevada Department of Business and Industry to be allocated to the Nevada Housing Division for the purpose of supplementing their first-time homebuyer program.
Mr. Schmidt.
Second.
Moved by Councilwoman Ratty, seconded by Councilman Schmidt to approve 6.8 as outlined by staff. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Passed unanimously.
Thank you.
Thanks, Armando. 6.9, review and possible approval of recommendation to plant a living Christmas tree in Victorian Square. Tracy Dominguez, welcome.
Members, Tracy Dominguez, Parks and Recreation Director. Before you this afternoon.
We have a question. Mr. Smith.
Tracy, looking at this business item, I am totally in favor of going to the living Christmas tree concept, and I don't even mind buying a Christmas tree and planting it and watching it grow, but it's my personal opinion that we should wait for Garibaldi to say they don't want to do what they've been doing for the years. So what I'd like to do is make a motion to table this so we can talk about it further. I know you want to get this passed, but I'd like to make that motion.
Do you have a second, Mr. Schmidt?
I'll second the motion with, I'd like to see that this item go through the Tour Mark Committee to go ahead and be discussed, because I think this is I think there's more than just the Christmas tree here. There's the entire Christmas parade and some of the expenditures and stuff that's happening into it. So I'd like to go ahead and see the Tour Mark to have a complete review to be able to come back to the council on.
Question I have, what does Tourmark have to do with this particular item? I don't think it's ever had anything to do with Tourmark before, has it?
The funding of the Christmas parade and everything has had extensive tour marketing. In fact, we did some allocations this year for it. So
Yeah, it has the parade, but not the planting of the tree or the bringing of the tree from Garibaldi.
May I clarify?
Sure.
My chart is a little bit incorrect on the Tourmark funding in my staff report. In 2008, there was $30,000 for Christmas. In 2009, $15,000. In the years 10 and 11, $37,500 were allocated to the Parks and Recreation Department to use as they saw fit for Arts and Bloom, Market, and Christmas in 10. In 11, as fit for Arts and Bloom, Sandcastle Soiree, and Christmas. We have not made any requests in 12 or 13. In 13, $10,000 was given to the Parks and Recreation Department for the purpose of newly recruited events to assist with their startup costs, because we do not have that type of funding available. That's what I have confirmed through the city manager's office.
Okay. So again, what does this have to do with Tourmark? It's never been in the purview of Tourmark in the past, has it? No.
Tourmark is the one that's always reached out to Garibaldi as a sister city.
And what has Tourmark provided to Garibaldi? Or
probably just assistance with the Nugget and everything else. Not much, except that it's always gone through Tourmark. This came through Tourmark earlier this year to discontinue the event, and at Tourmark we decided we didn't want to discontinue the Garibaldi. So this to me is just bringing it in again without informing us about it.
Go ahead, Tracy. I'm sorry.
According to the list of all the funding that was allocated in 13, there was nothing on the list for the Christmas or Garibaldi event. When I double-checked with, if there was, I'm unaware of it.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor, I believe. Did you second it, Mr. Smith? Okay, moved by Ron Smith and seconded by Ron Schmidt. And then we have questions. Mr. Kerrigan.
Yeah, I see two different issues here. I see one that's a Christmas tree and one that's a Garibaldi thing.
Yep.
I have no problem with talking about Garibaldi later, but I'd like to get the Christmas tree thing out of the way. And I'd say that I know that Julie's going to hug me for this, but I think, killing a Christmas tree every year, I'd rather see us plant one. Okay?
So people in favor of live Christmas trees got to you too?
Yeah. But I mean, when you think about it, if you plant it, you don't have to worry about cutting it down and transporting it every year. You just keep it alive if we could do that, as long as it, and we'll decide where we put it later. I wasn't sure that map on why it was going to cost $10,000 to put it somewhere. I mean, if you just dig a hole and stick a tree in it, what's the $10,000? But I mean, there were different places on Victorian Square, but I'd like to square away the Christmas tree thing right now, and if you want to talk about Garibaldi later, good, because I got a lot of things I'd like to say about Garibaldi, because I don't think we've been invited in the last 10 years, have we? Has anybody in the city council gone to Garibaldi?
Ron Schmidt.
Okay, well, they used to invite us. They used to be a big deal. It was a big parade, but I don't remember in the last, I think the last time I went was 10 years ago, and that was the last time I kind of remember getting an invitation. But I think we ought to split the two and say, let's talk about Garibaldi, because that is a tourist thing. Yep. They're from outside the area, and that may be something that Tourmark can get a hold of. But I think the Christmas tree part of it, I'd like to square away that right now. So if the maker of the motion would like to just talk about Garibaldi and table that, I have no problem with that.
And I don't have a problem with that. I said from the outset that I agree with the living Christmas tree concept, just not cutting out Garibaldi yet.
Okay.
So I'll change the motion to that
I'll support it if you say table it just to talk about Garibaldi, but I'd like to talk about the Christmas tree. We might be able to resolve that.
Well, I'll make the motion that we go ahead and approve the living tree, but then talk about the table the part about Garibaldi.
Seconder, okay with that?
I just think we need a clarification. What I'm understanding is that by your motion is that you want to continue with the Garibaldi arrangements with.
Yes, for
with
now,
their-
and then we can pursue
then
the
we can
living
still go
Christmas
ahead
tree.
and- We can still go ahead and plant a Christmas tree.
No,
to
that's
get it to
not what I
grow.
heard.
No, that's what
That's what I heard.
I don't have a problem with Christmas tree. We buy it and plant it, I don't have a
Would you
problem.
do me a favor and make it two different motions so we can, because you're confusing me, and that's easily done today.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, go ahead.
And I'll be quite honest, for well, let me ask just a question in accounting. In which cost centers does the cost of the Christmas tree that the city board come from?
Currently, with the transport of the tree, it comes out of Fund 1221,
And that fund is,
Parks and Recreation.
so it is not, are you saying with all your numbers of your cost here to put on the Christmas tree, parade and everything else like that, the cost of that tree is not associated in those numbers at all in any way?
Yes, it is.
Of course it is.
Okay, let me go ahead and just.
These are the numbers out of the 1221 fund for the Christmas budget.
Okay, so the cost of the Christmas tree, the program and everything is associated with Christmas parade, that program,
The
correct?
event, correct.
And that program is funded for many years, it's not on this table, by Tourmark.
Some of the years, correct.
Some
Other
years.
years,
The
we
last
gave
year or
money
two we
back,
have-
or we chose not to use it for that event.
Okay, so the last couple of years, we haven't.
We've not
Used
made a
Tourmark.
request the last 2 years, and in 2011, the entire funding that was allotted to us went towards Sandcastle. I don't recall the last year it was used toward Christmas.
My concern, Tracy, is that, this item came up well over a year ago, and it was talked about and saying we would, staff would take and get that information, would get it back to the Tourmark to discuss where we're on at. And my next conversation came from a resident of Garibaldi saying that they'd been contacted by staff and the program is over with. That they gave the guidelines that, this is the last one, this is the only thing we're doing this year, and the program's over with. Staff has made all those decisions, and I was received guarantees a year ago that I would be given that information. Mr. Smith and I and Tourmark, we're going to be able to sit down and talk about it and find methods to resolve this problem, because I think the overall big problem here is that Christmas program that you see here has drastically gone down in income from $50,000 a year down to $10,000 a year. We're not raising the money to go ahead and do that, to get this program where it's at. And our costs have continued to go up for the program. So I think there's a much, much bigger issue here. So I don't want to throw this thing on out, the Christmas tree on out. I'd like to sit down and do originally what I was told we were going to do, was sit down and discuss the item, find solutions for it. Don't go telling the rest of the world what we're going to do a month before it's even on the agenda for the city council to decide. Because I think, personally, I don't think that's a good way to do business. I think it's important for the city council to have those decisions before staff makes them and tells the rest of the world about it.
I'll be responsible for what staff did.
Ms. Ratty?
Thank you. I guess a couple things. I can't recall in my entire history on the council a time where we didn't allow the staff person to make the presentation and made a motion to table it right off the bat. So what I'm looking for is clarity around that. Are you saying you would like to table it because you don't think that the full council is the appropriate venue for this and it should go to Tourmark? Or are you tabling it because you're trying, the end outcome is to kill this item?
It's not to kill it. And I said in my opening statement that I support the concept of a living tree, that we need to get there eventually. Mike is right. I should have separated the two motions. So if you'd like, I'll make another motion, but I would like to see the different areas again. If we're going to do a living tree, I'd like to see it in Victorian Square where we're planning all the renovations and possibly an ice rink. That would be the spot for it. And again, I support the idea of a living tree. we do have a community up there that we've been sisters with for how long, and they've been bringing the tree down to us every year.
I wasn't finished.
Go ahead.
Thank you. And so my next question is, I'm willing to support something to be tabled if there's a reason that we're looking for some more information, like we don't have all the facts in front of us, something along those lines. But I'm not interested in supporting a motion to table it just to table it. So what is it, what more information do you need to be able to make this decision?
I want to table the portion that has to do with Garibaldi. I don't think that anybody has made the decision to discontinue what we've been doing with them.
Well, that would be the decision that's put for us today.
Yeah.
So in order to be able to make
Okay,
that
well,
decision,
I'll make a motion, and I'll tell you what, you can vote no, and then we can move on. How's
There's
that?
a motion already on the floor.
Do you want to take that motion off the floor?
I'll take the motion off to combine, yes.
Okay. Mr. Schmidt is next to speak.
You know, in business, when we have a problem or an issue, we get people around in a room to talk about how do we solve this issue. Okay, we've had, the first time I've seen a spreadsheet of where this cost is escalating and our revenues are decreasing with the Christmas program. We haven't sat down and talked about the issue of the Christmas tree. We haven't talked about where the cost centers are coming from. You know, we haven't sat down and talked the redevelopment of where the Christmas tree is going to go. There's been no discussion here, you know, and I think that there is time to say, time out, let's go. I asked a year ago that we have these discussions so we can work on them and come up with solutions. I had several solutions that I was ready to proceed, but I needed to know where everybody was at on this thing, as far as staff and the numbers and everything that they have, and I wasn't given that chance. I wasn't given that chance. I was promised that information. I was promised we'd sit down and look at different alternatives for it, and just clearly out of the blue, this came on up, you know, not through our staff to me, but through another organization 700 miles away coming saying, you know, are you aware that this is the direction your city's going? And I personally, you know, I'll say that I'm a little offended about this, that we need to sit down, take a look at what the problem is, what the outcomes are, what the solutions can be, how we can incorporate it into downtown, and just not throw this thing on out. This year, it'll be 28 years this program's been going on. And we're going to throw it out with absolutely no interface between staff and the committees that's been working with this thing for the last 28 years.
Mr. Kerrigan.
Well, I'm sitting down. We got the whole city council here. So this is the time for me to, I don't understand where you want to, who do you want to talk to staff? I think that do you want to talk to staff by yourself and then bring it back to city council? Because we're here right now, so let's do this thing. You know, we meet once every 2 weeks. We didn't have a meeting in the beginning of August, so here we are. I think, you know, what I'd rather do is let's talk about it right now. Do I want to stop having Garibaldi come down? I don't really care, okay, because I don't, you know, the last time at Christmas, I think only 3 of them made it anyway. So I really don't care. What I do care about is let's get something worked out, and that's why we're sitting here. I mean, if we all want a living Christmas tree, then let's vote on that right now. And where do we want it? Well, there's all of us are sitting right here. There's you know, places that were marked out. We can argue about that too. I've got nowhere to go. There's no football games on. I'm perfectly happy to work it out right now.
Ms. Ratty.
And that was going to be my concept, or my comment as well, is what better place for a dialogue about the issue than the council? We're a deliberative body and we've got an agenda item. We don't need to take the recommendation. We can, we cannot. So let's.
Why don't you go ahead and finish the presentation, Tracy?
Thank you. To start, there weren't
Take my football
any
and go home.
major decisions made. We were here tonight to ask for recommendations from the council as a whole. Sorry, I'm not I'm a little.
No, go ahead. I'm kind of aghast too, so don't worry about it.
What led me to my staff report was in an effort to be efficient and innovative with the Hometown Christmas event budget. was to see where we could trim some costs. And we're doing that across the board. We're doing that in advertising. We're doing that in promotion. Another area was option 1, spelled out in the report, which was to reconsider consider elimination of the transport and use of the Garibaldi Color Guard and use a local color guard at no cost. Option 2, I would like to state that I have spoken to Stephen Esquaga on more than one occasion, most recently on August 20th, regarding option 2, because it involves the reception that the Nugget provides at no cost to Garibaldi contingency. They've asked the same question for many years. The group has gotten smaller. Why are we still doing this? Stephen wanted me to make clear to you tonight that the Nugget will support the decision, either decision that the council makes, as to whether or not to continue the reception this year or to stop it. They would still provide a discounted room rate for Garibaldi folks that travel to the event. They are still willing to provide that. And then option 3 was to, in short, provide a living Christmas tree on the square in a location yet to be determined, but I had some suggestions on a map for you, and to accept the Garibaldi tree this year. And if approved, the living tree would be purchased and transported, and not a big deal made of it, and plant it for the tree lighting ceremony in 2014. We've considered a lot, about 6 different locations on the square, and I like the idea of the plaza. I wish some of this, I think we did discuss possible plaza options, Ron, when we were looking at the relocation of the clock and the kiosk and preparing that site for a potential ice arena. And I believe it kind of got planned out to have a tree there, whether it was living or temporary. In looking at, or in receiving feedback on the current state of the plaza, event producers are pretty happy with the layout. It's open. It allows them more programmability. So at this time, without further thought, what makes sense is the fountain location. Now that's not a popular topic because the public does enjoy this fountain. However, it's something to consider when the average cost to maintain the fountain is about $14,000 a year. And I know that we have limited resources to continue maintaining that fountain, and I've heard, theater's not too happy. I personally have sat in wet seats in the theater from children going straight from a fountain to the theater. But that aside, it's still, I think, a site worth considering if it's to be incorporated into the plaza area. I have Rick Darby here to answer any questions that you might have on the planting of the tree. We realize there might be concerns of a tree of this size disrupting the sidewalk and or infrastructure. However, if planted properly, there's never a guarantee, but we think we can minimize a lot of that future potential damage.
Questions for Tracy? Mr. Lawson.
Tracy, I'm just noticing the difference between the tree in Placerville. The trees must be free then, right?
It's $2,000 for the tree to dig it up, transport it, and bring it to Sparks.
And then to get one from Genoa, $6,500?
Correct, with a limited warranty and a shorter tree. And the limited warranty is pretty strict. I mean, if...
Are those Genoa trees more special than the ones in Placerville? Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Rick. Okay.
Come on down, Rick.
Come on down here, Rick. This is a fun subject. You're going to have a great time. Okay. That was I figured it was something like that, but it doesn't say.
And we didn't pay anything for these gentlemen to be over in Placerville. They were over there, I believe, scouting out a tree for the city of Reno. And we piggybacked on an opportunity to see what it would be like. That's all. No decisions have been made.
Okay. And then I just was looking at your options for placement. And regardless of the fountain and its popularity, that actually is the location that I like. It does play into the improvements, the roughly $2 million we're going to put into that in the future on the square. And it plays into special events where it's not blocking the view for everyone too. So that's kind of my topic for discussion, is that I like that location.
That location would not interfere with event producers as well, since they can't use it now anyway.
You talked to the theater about that?
No.
Okay.
No.
Mr. Kerrigan?
You know, getting the tree from, where's it, Placerville?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good deal. I think we ought to do that. But we need to talk about where it needs to go. All right? If you ever hang out around the fountain on the summertime,
I know.
there's tons of ladies that bring their kids and sit around there and just, they read books and let their kids go have a good time.
That's right.
And it's cheap, and it doesn't cost a cent, and it's fun. Okay? And to stick a tree in the middle of that fountain, good luck. I mean, I'm not going to be here in a year, but you guys are going to get shot. Somebody's going to get shot.
And it's
okay? And I just think that the perfect place for it is where we always do the tree, down by the amphitheater. Okay? And I understand because there's no place else that I could see on the plaza. But I'm telling you, don't mess with the fountain. It's just, it's $14,000. Yeah, we spend $14,000, but it's to make somebody happy. That's the people that live in the city. We spend a lot of money to make people in the city happy. I mean, you talk about the money we spend just on special events. Does the city make any money on that? No. We just barely break even if we don't go in the hole. And the only reason we do it is for people to have fun, and it's cheap fun. And I guarantee you, during the summertime, and I've been down there a lot, there's a lot of people that use that. So I say we buy the living tree, but I don't think we should put it there, because that really is going to raise some hackles on that one.
If I could elaborate a little bit on some of the site options. The fountain was actually an afterthought after my first version of the map. I simply brought it up in support of, Ron's comment about in the plaza area. I don't know where else would make sense in that area, and I haven't looked at it in further detail. So it was just simply, it was added on. Plus, it's the most expensive site to properly prepare and finish for a planter of a tree of this size. Our actual recommendation was to be the site number 4, which is just west of the bandstand, because the site at the amphitheater is too small to accommodate a living tree that's going to continue to grow.
I don't have a problem with the only one I have a problem with is 5 and 6. Other than that, I don't, whatever is the easiest place to put it. 4 is great. I'm thinking about the tree lighting. It's a lot of fun, and it's something everybody looks forward to every year. And I think that the smartest thing to do is go to a living tree, because we don't have to cut one down. I don't think that's going to upset the people from Garibaldi that we're not, using their tree at all. We can work that problem out later about what we're going to do. But once again, paying for their color guard to come down here, when we have a color guard, everybody, that city's going to understand that we're cutting costs. There's not a problem. Let me tell you something else. Last time I went up to Garibaldi, I paid for it myself. Okay, I don't remember, the city never paid for any of this. Am I not right, Sean? Or did I paid for it? I remember that. So if we're giving them a break, I wanted to know where my break was the other way, okay, because I never got one. So anyway, I just think there's two different issues here, and I think we need to solve at least the Christmas tree run right now. If we get it and plant it by October, why can't we use it?
It wasn't enough, we considered that, but it wasn't, I didn't feel it was enough proper notice to Garibaldi.
What do we tell them? We don't just, hey, don't worry about cutting a tree down?
Well,
Who's that going to hurt?
I felt they should have had more than a few months' notice, so we were giving them notice that this would be the final year, so that they wouldn't plan on next year.
I just don't,
And they
are
weren't
they
caught
going to
off
get
guard
upset
with
if we
it.
just say, if we vote on it today and say, hey, look, city council voted, we're going to buy a living Christmas tree or get one donated, and we don't, thanks a lot, but you don't need to kill one of your nice trees in Oregon.
According to staff that made the call, they weren't caught off guard. They saw it coming. They knew that this was being discussed, so I don't know.
I
was just trying to do, I was trying
by telling them
to
we
give
don't want
plenty
their
of notice,
tree
that's
anymore.
all. I was trying to give
Yeah.
a courtesy call with plenty of notice, so they weren't caught
Well,
off guard.
it's August now, and I think that's plenty of notice, and, we got 6 more months before Christmas.
time for the tree to take root?
That was the thing, whenever you move a tree like that, it's going to put it into a little state of shock a little bit. So you would probably not want to mess around at this holiday season, let it kind of establish itself.
Okay.
And I'd like to,
Tracy, I don't think number 5, the fountain, is viable at all. I mean, that feature is what makes us Sparks.
I understand that.
There, and
I just don't know where
I've
else
been
to
down
go there.
I've been down there, I don't know how many times in the summer, and I always marvel how many people use that. How about, when I was talking about the plaza, taking the 6th spot, just move it right across the street, the very end of the plaza? That's what I was talking about, not
Okay.
closer, because on the other
Well-
end, we're going to cover that, and we're going to put an ice rink maybe in there.
I think it would affect the ice rink, based on the size of a tree that's going to continue to grow. I have a concern with the rink.
Okay, so number 2, that's where we do it now?
Correct.
She said it was lousy spot.
It's not great for event producers, and the tree's going to grow. It's too small there, is our opinion.
So 4, what's planned for that area there? I can't remember.
Well, currently, there's an existing planter at location 4. It's just to the west of the bandstand, and the bandstand could be incorporated into the tree lighting. It's parking lot to the north. I did sit down and meet with Armando Ornelas last week about future plans through redevelopment, and he didn't cite any concerns other than wanted to make sure that the edge of the tree was a minimum of 25 feet from the property line to the north, and that, how big is this tree going to grow? Well, that remains to be seen, but it's not going to grow the same in an urban environment as it will in the wild. So it's, we talked about, with this existing planter, around it is a large area of pavers. That's why it's cheaper to work on this area. We could probably move the tree or the planter just slightly south, so to assure that it's not going to interfere with the sidewalk between the tree and the property line if future development happened in that parking lot.
And that tree you show in the picture is obviously not the tree that we're looking at. That's a 50-footer.
No, it's actually not. It's just the people are farther
I have a
away.
similar picture of
They're,
that.
oh, okay.
I don't think it's a similar.
The tree we begin would be.
That's the picture I saw.
Is that one?
That's probably, the tree you're looking at right there is probably about a 25-foot sequoia.
So where are those people at?
They're farther, they're deeper.
Okay, they look like they're right next to
Yeah,
you.
no, they're deeper.
Okay.
Yeah, that's Steve Churchillo from the city arena.
Well, if,
We could dictate the size that they select.
They can only bring a certain size. The only tree they could transport is about an 18-inch trunk. It's a 20 to 25-foot sequoia.
okay. Okay, that's the questions I have.
Ms. Ratty?
I'd like to advocate a different solution for the tree, because really this should be a longer discussion than what we're having now.
How can it be?
I would like to consider 1, 2, or 3, and my reasoning for that is I think we're putting a lot of time and energy into the plaza. I think what I hear from the event producers right now is they like the open and flexible space because it allows them to do different things with staging and booth setups and all of those things. So I don't want to do anything that affects that. In our future world, we are talking about wanting to sometime invest in a stage that would really allow for concerts and different kinds of things there. So I don't want to mess with that. And the ongoing conversation with the other vendors down there is that all of the energy is being sucked to the plaza, and we're not doing anything down at the other end of Victorian Avenue. And so that would be, the reason that I'm advocating for it is that it does give those other companies that are down there on Victorian, they would have the win this year of Bourbon Square opening again and really taking out that dark spot in the middle, and then we'd have some event amenity down a little bit closer to those folks. If 1 and 2 aren't viable because they're just too small, then I would advocate for 3.
Okay, and actually Site 3 was one of our first choices before we went down to the square to evaluate all the possibilities. We went away from 3 because we'd have to remove more trees than 1. We'd have to, we didn't want to do that, Julia.
Mike, you're going to kill more trees.
We would,
So we're going to kill some trees?
It's a great section of sidewalk, and there is a planter there, but we might have to, we anticipate having to remove the trees that are currently there, and we also, not knowing the size of the tree for sure, we didn't want to affect sight from the freeway to Bourbon Street, Bourbon Casino, but Bourbon Square, sorry.
Bourbon
But
Square.
once we evaluated it, it looked like it sat back enough that it may not interfere with their signage and their reader board and all that from the freeway. But again, that would be a discussion we'd want to talk, enter into with those business owners. That's out in front of the bridal shop currently. And if you replace 5 trees with 1 tree, it may increase programmability, but it's a big tree that's going in.
Well, given that, I'd also support 4.
So now we're, by the process of elimination, we're at 4, I guess, huh?
4 is a single tree removal. That might not be salvageable, I don't think. Rick didn't think it was salvageable, but
Well, we'll give the mayor
it's got
a
power
backbone
and
and let him
water
go to
at that
town.
site already.
And there's already power on that site, and it's the
There's
cheapest.
power and water there.
Yeah.
Mr. Lawson?
Well, with all that discussion, I guess we'll give up the fountain idea, and I'll support location 4 with the Placerville tree.
So we're down to...
I'll second that.
Are we ready to make a motion?
He just did, didn't he?
Okay, do we have
Okay,
a
then
second?
let's make that a motion.
And I just seconded it.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Lawson, seconded by Mr. Kerrigan. Any discussion? I just want to say, I just want to see a living tree because I want to see Julia hug Mike. So that's the only, that's the only reason why I want to
Put their arms around the tree.
Is he going to be dressed as a tree?
Does everyone
She'd
understand the
have better
motion?
luck getting her arms around the tree than me.
Okay, seeing no further discussion, please vote. Passes unanimously with those present. Okay. So now we want to go into the Garibaldi discussion.
All I cared about was the tree.
Let me ask, do you want to take this to Tormark? And I don't have a problem with that as long as the recommendation that you guys make comes back to the full council.
And it always does.
Okay.
All
All
our
right.
funding issues come back here. I just want, Rick said it, to cut him off this year. I know Mike is ready to pull his military crap all over there and cut him off at the knees, but I think this year, and then let's talk about next year.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
The tree's going to grow.
It will.
So we would, what I hear is, we would continue with the reception and the color guard this year,
And then
and the tree.
talk about it early next year.
And go to Tormark for funding to cover those, everything but the tree expenses.
Oh, you know what, Tracy? I think when they're down here, we can have a discussion.
Okay.
Is that a motion?
Well, I was going to make a motion. I think, why don't we let Tourmark pay for it? It's part of the, I mean, they're tourists. What, you know what I mean?
It's a minimal
Well,
cost.
that's going to defeat the whole purpose of a living tree, then.
No, for
No,
the next year.
for
Well,
the-
for this year, I mean,
For this
it's
year,
already
for the-
done for this year.
Too late.
Can I rephrase that, the suggestion of going to Tormark to cover the costs of the reception and the color guard, if that's what Garibaldi would like to continue in 14?
You know,
No,
and-
I'm not,
I
I
don't-
don't, I'm
did I-
not a, no.
And the color guard, we use our own, I get all that. I mean, let's talk to Garibaldi when they're down here this Christmas and tell them what we're going to do.
What are we going to do?
So if we don't, we're not going to renew it.
But that's not, how do you know?
Okay, Mike, make
No,
a
no,
motion
no,
that you want to
no, no.
renew it.
What I'm
This
saying is that's
why
what-
do we got to play these games? It's just.
I'm not playing a game. I'm asking this for a question, okay? Did anybody on the city council say they didn't want to continue with Garibaldi? I didn't hear that.
Okay, so you want to make a motion? I'm sorry, Mr. Martin.
That's all right. I lost control a long time ago.
Why don't we do nothing?
Yeah, just let it run like it is.
Just let it run like it is. You already said it. I forgot that that Turmark already gave money for Garibaldi to come down there. So let's just have business as usual. The next year when it comes up for discussion, then you can talk about Turmark funding Garibaldi if they want, if that's where we get the money.
Apparently Turmark did not give anything to Garibaldi.
Well, then next year you can. Right?
Make your motion.
They just gave money to the Parks and Rec, right? To use where
For newly recruited events, this is not classified as a newly recruited.
Other questions? Ms. Ratty?
I was just looking for a little bit of clarification on the motion. I think that what I hear is that we go forward with it this year, which makes all the sense in the world. Kick it over to Turmark without a predetermined outcome. And Turmark can talk about whether or not, because I think what Councilman Schmidt was looking for was the opportunity to do some brainstorming and some problem solving. I mean, if it's really that important, it could be funded through fundraising. It could be funded through a lot of different ways. And I think we need to let our entire Turmark committee look at it, decide if it's important enough to spend Turmark dollars on, or if there's another way to get it done. But we don't predetermine that outcome. We let Turmark decide, tell us what they want to do and bring it back. So that was my only, I think, Tracy, you had reinterpreted the motion to say, Turmark funds it, and I don't think we're to Turmark funds it. I think we're just to Turmark reviews it.
We would apply it. We would apply.
Right.
Yeah.
You would apply to Turmark.
We would apply.
So I would make a motion that we continue with it this year, and then we kick it back to Turmark to review for future consideration.
Do you have a second? Mr. Lawson, second? Okay, moved by Ratty, seconded by Lawson. Everybody understand the motion? Discussion. We have Mr. Carey.
Yeah, I just wanted to touch a couple of points on this. Our relationship with the city of Garibaldi is one which has a long history. It's one which has been changed quite a bit by the economy in the most recent years. And the commitments that have been in place in the past where a good number of visitors would come from Garibaldi on a bus and take up hotel rooms and things like that. A lot of that began to change as our country entered the Great Recession. And I think what Councilman Schmidt wanted to make sure was commitments that were being made by the sponsorship agencies would have led to that relationship being strained. And I think what he was trying to do was to make sure we had a dialogue with where direction we were going with the long connection between Garibaldi and the city of Sparks. So I think the motion, bringing it to where we have a representative from the Nugget and 2 city councilmen on Turmark, would provide us an opportunity to really vet where we are with the relationship of Garibaldi in terms of them being able to bring tourists here and what we can do to make that relationship last in the long term. Council travel to Garibaldi relative to Garibaldi Days. It was coordinated by the city manager's office for many, many years. Sally would make phone calls, and as different council members came on and went off, we would ask if you were interested in attending. I'm not sure that happened with Ed and Julia, to be honest with you. I would refer to you whether you were contacted or not, but it is always up to you to, as elected officials, to build your relationships with your sister cities, and I know that some of you have chosen, to visit once and move on. But I think that probably your sister city relationship could be strengthened by the Turmark Committee looking at the parts and pieces. If, for example, the Nugget was no longer interested in the reception because they're not seeing the room nights, we never really had the opportunity to do fundraising, see if another hotel was interested in. And those are some of the things that I think Councilman Schmidt wanted to look at, was what can go into strengthening our sister city relationship and looking at possibilities of as the economy has changed, how to set this on a course for the future for the relationship. I just wanted to add that to your discussions. I do support the motion that you're considering.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Any further discussion? Everyone understand the motion?
Let me just say,
go ahead, Ron.
I want to be clear why I was objecting to this, because staff was recommending option one, which was to eliminate everything this year. And that's what I couldn't live with. Well, I could live with it, but I couldn't vote for it. So just to be clear on that. That's it.
Everyone understand the motion? Nope, Mr. Kerrigan.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I had nothing, there's no problem with Garibaldi. I really didn't care one way or the other, to tell you the truth. But I think this is a good solution, and I think, you know, the only thing I was more worried about was the tree and getting a living tree. The thing with Garibaldi, you know, I have no problem with this at all. And I think continuing it's fine. And then you guys can talk about who's going to do what. I know the Nugget wanted to pull out because they weren't making any money. I mean, let's be honest about it. And like Sean said, it used to be, you know, a busload of people that came down here. So, you know, I'm going to support the motion. I have no problem with it.
But I think the Nugget, meaning Stephen Esquaga, told us that whichever way we went with the reception, they would do it or not do it, whichever we decided, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
They, as I stated, they just, you know, they see the decline. They weren't able to produce the numbers that I was asking for you today. They can get them if we wish, and maybe that'll be for the next discussion, is talk about the decline in attendance and or interest. I don't think it's a decline in interest. I think it's just kind of run its course a little bit, and we don't have the numbers we used to have.
Any other questions? Seeing none, please vote. Passes unanimously. Thanks, Tracy.
Thank you.
610 is a first reading. Thank God.
Bill number 2659, an ordinance amending Chapter 9 of the Sparks Municipal Code to define drug paraphernalia, providing other matters properly related thereto.
This is the first reading of Bill number 2659. The public hearing and second reading of this bill will be conducted at the regular City Council meeting on Monday, September 9th, 2013. 6.11 is the first reading.
Bill number 2660, an ordinance amending Chapter 14 of the Sparks Municipal Code to more closely conform to the 2012 International Fire Code and providing other matters properly related thereto.
This is the first reading of Bill number 2660. The public hearing and second reading of this bill will be conducted at the regular City Council meeting on Monday, September 9th, 2013. 612 is a first reading.
Bill number 2661, an ordinance amending the Sparks Municipal Code, Chapter 20.49, Section 20.49.010, to change off-site parking requirements in the industrial district and allowing alternative parking requirements for non-residential developments and providing other matters properly related thereto.
This is the first reading of Bill number 2661. The public hearing and second reading of this bill will be conducted at the regular City Council meeting on Monday, September 23rd, 2013. Okay, we have no public hearings. Closed. We're not having a closed door, are we, Sean? Okay. Comments from the public? Seeing no cards. Anyone in the public? Comments from the City Council and City Manager. Go ahead, Mr. Carey.
Mr. Mayor, I do have some committee announcements to make this evening. We have one vacancy on the Truckee River Fund Advisory Committee. The committee meets every 2 months to review projects for potential benefit of the river. Applicants should be very familiar with the Truckee River watershed and have a technical expertise to evaluate selected project. There is no set term, and members serve at the pleasure of the City Council. Persons interested in applying for this position should do so before Monday, September 16, 2013. At that time, those will be forwarded to the mayor for his recommendation to the City Council. If a citizen is interested in this position, you could contact the City Manager's office. We have Dr. Tracy Turner, who's part of a foundation that works on these projects that could answer questions regarding the role and opportunities this committee provides. And persons who are interested, a community service application is available from our city clerk's office and can be easily located on our city website at www.cityofsparks. Simply click on our governing tab and go to click on boards, commissions, and get involved. And there you'll find your community service application. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Anyone else? Okay, seeing no further business, we are adjourned.
Okay, I'll call the order of the Sparks Redevelopment Agency meeting for August 26, 2013, with a roll call, please.
Chairman Ron Smith.
Here.
Agency members Ratty.
Here.
Lawson.
Here.
Martini.
Here.
Kerrigan.
Here.
Schmidt, absent. Agency Attorney Eiding. Here. And Agency Manager Carey.
Here.
We have a quorum, thank you.
Okay, I'll open it up to the public. Would anybody in the public wish to speak at this time? Seeing none, we bring it back to the agency. Approval of the agenda.
Move to approve, Mr. Chair.
We have a motion. Second. And a second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Recommendation to approve the minutes of the regular Sparks Redevelopment Agency meeting for July 22nd, 2013. Any changes?
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Report of claims and bills approved for payment and appropriation transfers for the period of July 4th, 2013 through August 7th, 2013.
Move to approve, Mr. Chair.
We have a motion
Second.
and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Comments from the agency. Member? Anybody? Okay, we'll move on to comments from the public. Anybody in the public wishing to speak at this time? Seeing none,
Oh,
we'll
you've got-
bring it back.
You've got Sean down there.
Oh, Sean, you want?
Meeting in these chambers,
What?
so I thought we might want to put to the record that he was in attendance for his last redevelopment meeting on this date, so.
All the way until 5 o'clock. Stay
Duly
to the
noted,
bitter end.
yeah.
You said
To
in
the
these
bitter
chambers,
end.
what other chambers are you going to have a meeting in?
Yeah. Okay. Seeing no comments, we are adjourned.